Yang Kai's heart instantly felt icy when he heard this. Then, Senior, your subordinates? Yang Kai inquired again. They'll be here soon. Ban Qing frowned impatiently. This king prefers to act alone. He then looked Yang Kai over with suspicion. Why are you asking these things? It's nothing. Yang Kai took a deep breath and slowly stated, Junior only wishes for your understanding. As he spoke, he transformed into a beam of light that charged directly at Ban Qing. Yang Kai had thought things through quite well. Since the heavenly monster mountains were already sealed, and there were 3 other Emperor Realm Masters apart from Ban Qing searching elsewhere, and Ban Qing's subordinates had yet to arrive, now was the best opportunity to fight. Running wasn't realistic. Ban Qing was skilled at concealment and assassination to begin with, so it was likely that he had exquisite movement skills which would prevent Yang Kai from escaping. Even if Yang Kai managed to escape, where would he run to in these gigantic heavenly monster mountains that he wasn't familiar with? He might be unlucky enough to run into someone else, and there would be no hope at all anymore if he was caught in a pincer attack. As such, Yang Kai figured it would be best to fight it out with Ban Qing while the latter was still alone. He could still try to run if he couldn't win, and if he could win, then there would be no need to escape. Ban Qing arched his eyebrows, not having expected that Yang Kai would be so daring. But it also didn't seem to be pure recklessness, as this boy even had the power to move freely under Ban Qing's pressure. Previously, Ban Qing hadn't thought anything of Yang Kai because there was a natural gap in their strength. Under the suppression of an emperor, no Dao Source Realm cultivator should be able to move. The middle-aged man collapsed on the ground right now was the best evidence of that. In Ban Qing's eyes, Yang Kai's cultivation level was similar to the middle-aged man, 3rd order Dao Source Realm, although Yang Kai's soul was slightly stronger and bordered on the Emperor Realm. However, this still didn't have too much meaning, since as long as Yang Kai didn't cross the threshold of Emperor Realm, there would still forever be a difference like heaven and earth. Ban Qing thought that Yang Kai couldn't move a finger under his pressure. However, when Yang Kai actually moved, he was as fast as the wind, as if he was completely unaffected by Ban Qing's aura. Ban Qing was surprised by this discovery, and then he became somewhat angry out of shame. Coldly snorting, he stood where he was without moving. Rather than move, he released his pressure at full force so that it enveloped Yang Kai. Ack! Yang Kai moaned while he was midair, and his body suddenly froze for an instant, as if the air around him had become solid and his movements were greatly restrained. You're quite brave, but utterly foolish. Ban Qing coldly glanced at Yang Kai with eyes filled with disdain. Senior, aren't you looking down on others too much? Yang Kai roared as his spiritual energy exploded and engulfed his figure in flames. The powerful flames burned and jumped, making Yang Kai appear like he was on fire, and the temperature in the area also seemed to increase significantly as green trees instantly withered and the ground baked. Conflagrated aura. Ban Qing's eyes dilated as he exclaimed in astonishment. Mutated knowledge seas were incredibly rare, but couldn't be denied that they had great power, especially a fire attribute knowledge sea which was renowned for being domineering and having great destructive force. Dense crackling sounds began to sound in midair. Of course, this was the sound of Ban Qing's Emperor Realm pressure being shattered. When Yang Kai used his conflagrated knowledge sea, this greatly decreased the pressure on him as he transformed into a flame that leapt in front of Ban Qing. Clenching his fist, Yang Kai sent a vicious flame-covered punch out. No wonder you were so arrogant. It seems you do have some skill. Ban Qing didn't panic at all when faced with this terrifying attack and instead calmly assessed Yang Kai before tapping his foot and leaping backwards. As he withdrew, he seemed to cross over space, and when he appeared again, he was already 100 meters away from Yang Kai. Yang Kai's vicious punch hit nothing but air. If it is someone in the same realm, it's likely that there are extremely few in the world who can defeat you. But Ban Qing chuckled coldly. This king is an emperor, you know? Have you not woken up yet? He roared the final word, causing the originally heavy pressure to become even heavier. The flames on Yang Kai's body kept flickering unsteadily, and he seemed like he was being crushed under a large mountain as his body sank. Yang Kai roared against the tremendous pressure, causing great pain all over his body. Stamping his feet hard, Yang Kai once again charged in front of Ban Qing despite the restraining pressure. "Little brat, do you have a death wish?" Ban Qing appeared serious for the first time as he spoke in a low voice. This was because Yang Kai was forcing himself to break through Ban Qing's pressure without any regard for his body. This would actually be highly damaging to one's own body, and it was even possible to destroy one's soul by doing this. However, it seemed as if Yang Kai didn't even care or worry about such a consequence. He acted like he wanted to trade his life for Ban Qing's life. Ban Qing had never met such a person before. The most suitable word to describe such a person was madman. Since you can't see reality for yourself, then this king will help you. Ban Qing became angry as he pushed out his hand. A powerful force erupted from his palm and whipped up an energy wave that enveloped Yang Kai. Dang dang dang. Yang Kai explosively flew backwards as he kept coughed out in pain, the fires surrounding his figure dimming significantly. Yang Kai had obviously been injured by this blow. Even a casual blow from an Emperor Realm Master was not to be underestimated. However, Yang Kai didn't worry too much because of his soul-warming lotus protection. Anyone else who suffered such an injury likely would have started wanting to retreat already and focus on healing themselves. Yet, Yang Kai didn't need to, because as long as his soul wasn't shattered or destroyed, the soul-warming lotus would fix everything like it was new if given enough time. Yang Kai had the ability to act like a madman. Yang Kai stumbled and his expression went dark. Ban Qing then suddenly disappeared from where he stood before Yang Kai recovered his balance. Right after that, he spoke from beside Yang Kai in a calm yet distant tone. "Now, I think you should understand." It had to be said that Ban Qing was indeed highly skilled at concealment and assassination. His actions weren't hinted at whatsoever, making them difficult to defend against. There was also no time lag at all between when he disappeared and reappeared to attack. His hand still held onto the spiritual energy dagger from before, and his attack aimed directly for the center of Yang Kai's heart. He used the exact same technique as he had against the middle-aged man. But at this moment, Yang Kai's mouth arched upwards in a slightly strange and subtle angle. The next instant, a purple light flashed as a layer of light mysteriously appeared on Yang Kai's body and formed a barrier around him. Ding! A crisp sound echoed. Ban Qing's attack hit the purple sun profound light shield. The defensive soul-type artifact of Dao Source Grade low rank was actually unable to block this terrifying attack with its light barrier, so it shattered in the next instant. Ban Qing's one casual attack managed to break the purple sun profound light shield's defense. The soul-type artifact also suffered heavy damage to its spirituality, so Yang Kai would need a lot of time and spiritual energy to continuously nourish it in order to use it again. But this was already sufficient. What the hell was that? Ban Qing had a look of astonishment. Although he was one of the 4 vice-generals of the Divine Ascension country, he had never seen a soul-type artifact in his life before. That was why his first reaction was that something was off when he destroyed Yang Kai's purple profound light shield. Before he could figure out what had happened, a buzzing sound suddenly filled his ears. Ban Qing mysteriously felt like his soul was trembling as the buzzing became louder, and an instinctive chill filled his body, as if he was facing incredible danger. Ban Qing couldn't help but widen his eyes as he looked towards Yang Kai's hand. He discovered that a sword had actually appeared at some unknown time. This sword appeared quite ordinary and didn't have any flashy or exaggerated features. It seemed like a common sword that could be found anywhere. However, Ban Qing felt an instinctual fear towards it. The sword made a buzzing sound that seemed to draw in his soul and make Ban Qing feel extreme fear after hearing it. The light swirling on the weapon also seemed capable of devouring his soul and making him fall into the abyss forever. Ban Qing instantly felt that things were bad as he hurriedly tried to retreat. However, he was already too late. The space around him suddenly solidified. It was the power of space principles. Yang Kai was only here with his soul avatar, not his physical body, so he was unable to use normal artifacts and secret techniques. However, he could still use his understanding and control over principles. Unfortunately, He would be unable to use secret techniques like Moonblade and Exile because using these secret techniques required the support of both source chi and spiritual energy. Lacking one would render the technique unable to be used. Xianxia had already experimented with this when he was previously fighting against monster beasts. His secret techniques needed his physical body as the foundation and source of strength in addition to his ability to manipulate principles. Even an Emperor Realm Master like Ban Qing could be temporarily frozen through the use of space principles, though. At this instant, Xianxia was already smiling viciously as he chopped down with his sword. I wonder if you've noticed, Senior. You have a habit of attacking from your opponent's right side and targeting their heart. Is this a habit? Or does Senior like to show off just how strong you are? Xianxia's words were filled with a teasing tone as they echoed in Ban Qing's ears. Of course, Ban Qing was in no mood to care about that right now. When the sword sliced down on him, he actually felt like death itself was approaching. Profound Dragon Seal. Ban Qing shouted loudly as the spiritual energy in his body suddenly activated. The next instant, a thick light barrier appeared before him. This was quite a powerful soul secret technique. Since Divine Ascension Mirror World cultivators didn't have artifacts or physical bodies, they could only strengthen their own souls and cultivate soul secret techniques in order to raise their strength. It was also because of this that the cultivators of this world were outstanding in their understanding of soul secret techniques. Cultivators from the star boundary couldn't even compare. Profound Dragon Seal was a defensive secret technique that was the crystallization of Ban Qing's cultivation, a self-devised skill he had perfected over many long years. He had only ever used this secret technique 3 times since he reached the Emperor Realm, and every time that he used it, his opponent had also been an Emperor Realm Master. However, he was forced to use this secret technique in front of a Dao Source Realm cultivator like Xianxia. He could sense that he would certainly die unless he used this secret technique. He had no basis for his feelings, but he deeply trusted his senses. A dragon shadow appeared and twirled itself around his body, and in just the blink of an eye, a light barrier that resembled a shield appeared. On the shield were some faint dragon drawings that seemed like they were alive. After Ban Qing used this technique, he felt slightly reassured as the panic in his heart receded quite a bit. However, the sword sliced past with a simple movement that carried no extravagance. The Profound Dragon Seal, which was capable of defending against an Emperor Realm Master's full-force attack, seemed as soft as tofu in front of Xianxia. Without a sound, the solid defense was sliced in half as the sword continued towards Ban Qing's chest without being slowed one bit. If it landed a solid hit with how abnormal this sword appeared to be, it was likely that even someone as strong as Ban Qing would be sliced in half. Ban Qing's expression suddenly changed as he no longer dared to hesitate. Pushing his spiritual energy madly, he used the explosive force to retreat with all his strength. Chi. There was a soft sound as Ban Qing forcibly broke free from the restraint of the space principles and barely managed to dodge a deadly blow from the blade strike. However, a wound that spanned the entire length of his chest, from his shoulder to his stomach, appeared, nearly taking off one of his arms in the process. There was no blood coming out of the injury, nor was there any sign of his physique being damaged. In fact, there wasn't even any sign of bones. Yet, pure spiritual energy was pouring out of the injury as it continuously vanished into thin air. Such a pity! Xianxia couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at Ban Qing. Previously, Xianxia had rashly charged in front of Ban Qing twice in order to lure Ban Qing into letting down his guard so that he could find a chance to deliver a fatal blow. Still, Xianxia's plan had somewhat succeeded. His 2 rash actions earlier had obviously caused Ban Qing to underestimate him, resulting in the latter directly closing in to strike Xianxia. This gave Xianxia the chance to use a heaven-destroying counterattack. However, an emperor was still an emperor. When Ban Qing's life was in danger, his reaction speed was incredibly quick, and he actually managed to dodge such a sudden attack from such a close distance. Not far away, Ban Qing had been seriously injured as his eyes shook violently and his expression changed several times. He stared at the sword in Xianxia's hands while roaring, "What the hell is that? The soul-splitting saber!" Xianxia had a wicked smile as he waved the sword in his hands and used it to point at Ban Qing in the distance. It doesn't hurt flesh. It only cuts souls. When entering the divine Ascension mirror world, Xianxia had only brought 3 things with him along with his soul avatar. The first was the purple sun profound light shield that Gao Shueting had given him. The second was the 7-colored soul-warming lotus in his knowledge sea. And the third was this soul-splitting saber. The saber was an item he obtained from the Insect Emperor. Back on Shadowed Star, the Insect Emperor had caused great trouble everywhere. But when Xianxia slew him, he had obtained the Insect Enslavement Bracelet and Soul-Splitting Saber, 2 Emperor artifacts. That Insect Enslavement Bracelet had the special effect of suppressing various types of insects. Xianxia had escaped death several times thanks to the Insect Enslavement Bracelet. As for the Soul-Splitting Saber, he had hardly ever used it before and had not yet fully refined it. That was why Xianxia had been really astonished when he first entered this world and discovered the soul-splitting saber was available to him. Even though he had never refined this Emperor artifact before, it was undeniable that it possessed strong attack power against souls. With this saber in hand, Xianxia had managed to seriously injure a master like Ban Qing in just 1 hit. If he had slightly refined the saber, then it definitely would have been quite easy for him to kill Ban Qing in a special world like this divine Ascension mirror world. Xianxia had learned his lesson. He secretly resolved that when he returned to his world, he would definitely find a chance to properly refine the Emperor artifacts in his possession. Before, he hadn't refined them because he wasn't powerful enough, but now he was already a Dao Source Realm cultivator, and his soul was comparable to that of a peak Dao Source Master, so refining these Emperor artifacts shouldn't be a problem anymore. No matter if it was the soul-splitting saber or the insect enslavement bracelet, they would be really useful in certain special circumstances. Damn it! Ban Qing gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice. Although he didn't understand what Xianxia meant by doesn't hurt flesh, he clearly recognized that this saber was a serious threat to him on a fatal level due to the previous attack. He was now seriously injured, yet Xianxia was completely uninjured. Additionally, it seemed like Xianxia knew some rather strange abilities, so Ban Qing was already thinking of retreating. Although it would be truly embarrassing if word spread that an Emperor Realm cultivator like him ran away from a Dao Source Realm Jr., Ban Qing no longer cared at this time. His life was the most important thing, while face and everything else was only secondary. Not only that, Ban Qing's cultivated secret techniques were all the type to assist in covert assassination. Normally speaking, someone who cultivated these types of secret techniques and divine abilities could be called cautious if one wanted to be nice, cowardly if they were to be blunt. Such people would always instantly run for 1,000 kilometers if they failed on the first attack. They would never stay for long battles with the enemy, as their fighting abilities would be seriously diminished in a direct confrontation. If a master like Lien Yen had been before Xianxia right now, he would never have immediately retreated even if he was caught off guard and injured by Xianxia. An injury would never possibly make up for an absolute gap in strength between different realms. Regardless, after Ban Qing said that, his figure flashed as he wanted to retreat first and formulate a plan. But at that moment, he suddenly lost track of Xianxia from his vision. Just 1 moment ago, the Dao Source Realm brat had been standing not far in front of him. Yet now he had actually vanished in the blink of an eye. What? Ban Qing was astonished. He was already a master who was highly skilled at concealment, yet he discovered that there were always people out there who were more skilled than him. Xianxia's sudden disappearance was obviously a far better technique than his own, and Xianxia could clearly use space principles, which allowed him to truly ignore the limitations of space. Ban Qing hurriedly released his divine sense to try and determine Xianxia's position. However, he immediately sensed a chilly wind coming from behind his head. This chill seemed as if it blew from the depths of hell and could freeze a person's soul. Ban Qing widened his eyes as he had already sensed his enemy's position. He didn't dare to react slowly as he hurriedly turned around while simultaneously sending out a blast of pure spiritual energy visible to the naked eye. Honk! Violent energy clashed and sent Xianxia flying backwards from the impact. Light flashed furiously and unsteadily on his body in midair, while Ban Qing didn't even budge. There was still an absolute difference between their realms, so even though Xianxia had teleported to launch an ambush, it still didn't achieve the desired effect. It now seemed that if it wasn't for Ban Qing being overconfident and not understanding the existence of soul-type artifacts, he wouldn't have been injured by Yang Kai's saber. As long as he had a slight understanding of the soul-splitting saber's threat and was slightly on guard, Yang Kai never would have succeeded in wounding him. Humph! Yang Kai landed and made a muffled sound of pain as his expression flickered slightly. This clashing between souls wasn't something that humans could usually bear. This pain was far more difficult to withstand than any type of physical pain. He felt as if his soul was being torn apart, and there was no way to suppress this pain at all. Apart from bearing with it, there was no second option. However, Yang Kai was still smiling faintly, because his trick had succeeded yet again. Wang Wang. A strange buzzing sound could be heard as Ban Qing paused in surprise. However, he soon realized just where this sound was coming from. He hurriedly lowered his head and saw that the injury on his body was actually covered with a dense layer of small pitch-black dots. Upon closer inspection, Ban Qing immediately felt his head go numb. That was because those pitch-black dots were actually tiny insects, numerous enough that they were all but uncountable. Anyone would likely find it difficult to withstand their body being covered in insects, but what truly terrified Ban Qing was that these tiny insects actually pierced into his wound, and nearly half of them had entered his body in just the blink of an eye. Ban Qing's face became incredibly pale. With his Emperor Realm cultivation, he could naturally sense that these insects were actually beginning to take ravenous bites off him as they fed on his essence. Ban Qing was constantly losing strength. What are these? Ban Qing couldn't help but stagger back several steps as he lowered his head and looked at his own body, shouting loudly in fear. Just what is this? He had asked this question several times already, ever since he met Yang Kai. For a cultivator like Ban Qing, who had been born and raised in the divine Ascension mirror world, many of the techniques and items that Yang Kai showed to him today were beyond his understanding. Most critically of all, even if Ban Qing didn't recognize the soul-devouring demon insects, he felt an instinctive fear when he saw them. This type of fear came from the depths of his soul and was completely innate, like when a frog met a snake, or if a rabbit met an eagle. As Ban Qing angrily roared, he also shook his body and formed an invisible aura that wrapped around himself. The soul-devouring demon insects which hadn't managed to enter his body were all sent flying outside by the impact. However, pure spiritual energy was still pouring out from Ban Qing's injury. Such spiritual energy was the most delicious food of all for the soul-devouring demon insects, so they would never let this go. The insects didn't even wait for Yang Kai's command, as they gathered together again into a cloud and enveloped Ban Qing. Ban Qing witnessed a despairing scene. His Emperor Realm defensive aura actually didn't even obstruct these insects as they could literally chew through it. In just a short while, they gnawed open a hole through his defenses and once again pounced onto his body to invade him through his injury. Demon insects! Ban Qing seemed to suddenly realize something as his expression greatly changed while he roared in panic. These are demon insects! His eyes contained a rather pitiful expression as he shouted. He hadn't been so helpless even when he faced the soul-splitting saber. Yet this Emperor Realm Master was showing despair when he faced the soul-devouring demon insects. There exists an ancient legend in this world about a type of special insects that are the nemesis of all things living. No matter how strong or how high one's cultivation is, they would be no match for these insects. Moreover, these insects could not be killed in any way and would continue devouring the bodies of the living to grow and multiply. These insects were known as the demon insects by the inhabitants of this world. Demon insects initially appeared without warning, so no one really knew where they came from, nor did anyone pay attention to them at first because they were still small and weak back then. But as time passed, and they continued to devour and grow, the horror of these demon insects gradually became known. Wherever they went, all life disappeared. Where they nested, no one dared come within 100,000 kilometers. In ancient times, where the legends about these insects originated, the number of masters in this world far exceeded today. There were even many third-order emperors. When the demon insects grew to become a calamity, the masters of the world could no longer sit idly by, and thus they joined forces and prepared to do their utmost to destroy the demon insects that plagued this world. Nobody knows what happened in that battle. But after that, all the masters of the world disappeared, and so did the demon insects that were so feared and talked about. Some speculated that the masters died alongside the demon insects. Otherwise, how could the final result be explained? There were also speculations that the masters had secluded themselves from the world after defeating the demon insects, living apart from the trappings of society. Some even speculated that the demon insects devoured the masters and were now slumbering in some unknown place, evolving into a more terrifying form, and would one day return to end the world. But these were only rumors. No one ever believed them, and no person had ever seen what these so-called demon insects, let alone knew what they actually looked like. Barely anyone believed that these demon insects really existed. But right now, right here, Ban Qing understood that the rumors were not fabricated. There really did exist bone-chilling demon insects in this world, and these tiny insects were just as the rumors said, feeding on the energy of living beings, unable to be killed or destroyed. One could only sit back and watch them grow, and then lay waste to the entire world. When he thought about these ancient rumors, Ban Qing completely lost all will to fight Yang Kai. He could not understand how Yang Kai could spur a group of demon insects to fight for him as a mere Dao Source realm cultivator. Did he not worry that these demon insects would devour him too? Howls of misery emerged as Ban Qing writhed in pain, seemingly falling into an abyss of destruction. It was an unbearable torture as Ban Qing experienced the fear and despair of his soul being devoured slowly by the rampaging soul-devouring insects. He was like a madman, throwing out his energy desperately. All sorts of wonderful and amazing soul-secret techniques that Yang Kai had never seen before were released from Ban Qing's hands as he continued to struggle. The space around them became unstable under this thrashing. Yang Kai hurriedly moved away and observed Ban Qing from afar. Even he did not expect that this Emperor Realm Master would become so crazy after shouting out that short name. Demon insects? Why would he call them that? Are the soul-devouring insects related to this world in some way? Yang Kai pondered with a frown. He couldn't figure it out, but it was without a doubt that the scene before him was exactly what he wanted to see. First, he launched a sneak attack with the soul-splitting saber. Then he used Ban Qing's blind spot to infest him with soul-devouring insects to finish the job. Even though both his moves were successful, Yang Kai really had no way to stop him if this Emperor Realm Master was determined to escape. His ability to manipulate space principles was not strong enough to really bind an Emperor Realm cultivator. If Ban Qing escaped and revealed his information to his comrades, Yang Kai would lose his advantage. Ban Qing seemed to be in a state of madness though, losing himself in despair, and from the looks of it, he might even be reaching the end of his life, which was a welcome sight for Yang Kai. In the end, Ban Qing was still an Emperor Realm Master, so despite going mad and acting in an uncontrolled manner, the soul-devouring insects weren't able to completely devour him in short order. Yang Kai did not try to prod him either, choosing to watch from afar instead, waiting for an opportunity to act. And, as time passed, the aura coming from Ban Qing's body became weaker and weaker. From the Emperor Realm, he regressed to the Dao Source Realm, then the Origin King Realm, then the Origin Returning Realm. After an hour had passed, Ban Qing's body suddenly froze, and he stood in place, unmoving. Immediately afterwards, Ban Qing's body burst open with a bang, transforming into 1,000,000 points of light before they too dissipated into the world. At the location where he disappeared, a cloud of insects was squirming and tossing about. After devouring the energy of an Emperor Realm Master, the soul-devouring insects seemed to have gained considerable growth, and Yang Kai could see that their aura had gotten significantly stronger. Yang Kai was also troubled at this moment though. Even though the soul-devouring insects had not been of the greatest use to him these recent years, they would undoubtedly grow much stronger after this visit to the Divine Ascension Mirror World and become a killer weapon for him. But if he lost control of the soul-devouring insects at this time, he could lose a means to use against his enemies in the future. Moreover, if he were to allow the soul-devouring insects to act without restraint in this world, Yang Kai dared not even imagine what heights they would grow to. There may be other ways to deal with soul-devouring insects in the outside world, but here all living beings were made of spiritual energy, so they were little more than food for the soul-devouring insects. These insects would constantly grow stronger and stronger until they devoured this entire world. So, no matter what, Xianxia did not dare to leave the soul-devouring insects here. He had already noticed that these soul-devouring insects were showing signs of resistance towards his orders, and this was becoming more and more obvious as they grew. Now, they were straight out ignoring him. Naturally, Xianxia was flustered. He kept actively sending orders with his divine sense to the soul-devouring insects, but it was to no avail. In the end, Xianxia had no choice but to stimulate the soul-warming lotus in his body. All of a sudden, a 7-colored glow burst out, radiating in all directions. Perhaps because the soul-devouring insects felt the soul-warming lotus was their home after living there for such a long time. When they sensed the 7-colored glow, they swiftly returned to Xianxia. Xianxia couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and with a wave of his sleeve, he put them inside. Standing in place, Xianxia's brows furrowed as he silently sensed the movements of the soul-devouring insects. Strangely enough, the soul-devouring insects turned docile as soon as he took them back, not displaying the unruly behavior from just now anymore. But this caused Xianxia to realize a problem. He had to refine the insect enslavement bracelet as soon as possible, otherwise, he would lose the means to enslave the soul-devouring insects if they grew more powerful. The insect enslavement bracelet was an artifact of the insect emperor, who used it to subdue all sorts of exotic insects, so it was the best tool to control the soul-devouring insects. Though the fight just now was dangerous, it did not actually affect Xianxia's growth that much due to how easily he won in the end. This was all thanks to his emperor artifact and the soul-devouring insects. Xianxia himself did not actually exert much effort. However, Ban Qing could be considered the first Emperor Realm Master Xianxia had killed. Even if it was an Emperor Realm Master without a physical body, only a soul, he was still not easily killed. In the outside world, Xianxia would never have been able to accomplish this. Thinking back, Xianxia couldn't help but feel giddy. If Ban Qing had used his most proficient assassination divine ability from the very start, then he would not even have had the chance to resist. Fortunately, Ban Qing had received orders to capture him alive, which gave Xianxia such an opportunity. He sighed and frowned for a moment, wondering where he should go now. According to what Ban Qing had said, Heavenly Monster Mountain had been sealed off, and many cultivators under Zhou Dian's leadership were searching for the so-called Star of Calamity. So it was definitely impossible for Xianxia to leave the Heavenly Monster Mountain now. Staying here was not an option either, so it seemed he could only continue going deeper inside and hope to be able to evade disaster. Considering all this, Xianxia made up his mind. Looking around him, Xianxia eyed the middle-aged man who had fainted on the ground. Who knows what Ban Qing did to knock this guy out, but he showed no signs of waking up even now. That man had nothing to do with Xianxia, so the latter could not even bother to deal with him, choosing to leave him there to fend for himself. Xianxia continued scanning his surroundings, and soon his eyes settled in a certain direction. Grinning, he waved towards that spot. Behind a tree was the purple squirrel, looking curiously around, its eyes filled with vigor. After making sure it was safe, it crept out and, slowly, came in front of Xianxia, staring up at him with concern, as if asking if he was hurt. Xianxia smiled, leaned over and reached out, picking up the little squirrel and placing it on his shoulder. After adjusting his bearings, Xianxia then headed deeper into the Heavenly Monster Mountain. Some tens of thousands of kilometers away from the Heavenly Monster Mountain, there was a valley surrounded by mountains on all sides. This mountain valley was filled with fog, and the people living nearby all referred to it as Misty Valley. The fog permeated the valley and did not dissipate throughout the year. It was so dense that one could hardly see one step in front of themselves, and this place was extremely odd, and even though this fog was harmless to living beings, one would always lose their sense of direction once they entered it. From time to time, daring inhabitants of the nearby regions would come to try to explore the Misty Valley and figure out what secrets were hidden within, but regardless of their cultivation, they would lose their sense of direction and get lost inside soon after entering. Nobody ever found out what was hidden inside. However, nobody had ever been completely trapped inside the fog either. That was because, when these people were trapped to the point of despair, an invisible force would inevitably appear to send them outside. No one knew what the nature of that force was, simply that when it arrived, the people trapped inside Misty Valley would find themselves outside of it. Some speculated that a hidden expert was secluded inside Misty Valley, and that the dense fog over the mountain valley was this senior expert's creation so as to not be disturbed by other people. And, even though the cultivation level of this senior expert was beyond compare, he was a kind person and would help those who were trapped in Misty Valley instead of killing them. Of course, this is only the speculation of those living nearby. As to what truly existed inside Misty Valley, no one could say. There was a piece of land covering around 1 square kilometer at the center of Misty Valley that was not covered by fog, however, and it was the only place inside Misty Valley like it. Within this 1 square kilometer of land, there were 20 or so big and small burial mounds. These mounds seemed to be scattered all around the land, each with a wooden marker erected at its head, engraved with a different name. Judging from the technique and writing, it was clear that these headstones stemmed from the same person. Within this world, any living being would transform into pure spiritual energy after their death and dissipate into the air, so no bodies could be left behind. Naturally, these graves were empty. Still, a memorial was erected here, so obviously it was to pay tribute and remembrance to the fallen. If one looked closely at the names on these headstones, though, they would find that each of them was a well-known legendary master. Of course, these names all belonged to the distant past. Currently, these experts had long disappeared without a trace, and nobody knew whether they were alive or dead, but never would anyone have thought that they were all long gone from this world. If the general populace were to learn that these experts were all gathered here, the news would surely shake the world. It was quiet within Misty Valley, as if there was nothing else here other than the graves of the dead. A simple wooden house was the only structure in this place, built about 100 meters away from these graves. Inside this house, a man with a snow-white beard sat cross-legged on the floor. He looked quite old, but his complexion was bright, giving him an immortal temperament with extraordinary bearing. On the surface, this old man didn't seem to have a trace of cultivation, nor any energy fluctuations coming from his body. He was just like an ordinary old man. However, every time he breathed, it was as if the surrounding world breathed with him. This person's cultivation had obviously reached an extraordinary peak, allowing him to achieve a kind of unity with the world itself. Suddenly, the old man opened his eyes, which overflowed with divine light. Traces of the sun, moon, and stars could be seen within them, and the spirits of 10,000 beasts flitted past in a flash. His body did not seem to move, but with a flash he suddenly disappeared. By the time he reappeared, the old man had already arrived at a certain spot in Misty Valley. He waved his sleeve and a gale blew up all of a sudden, blowing away the dense fog in front of him. A bizarre and inexplicably formed black altar suddenly appeared before the old man. Staring at the altar with an imposing look, the old man listened intently. Wang wang. A small, almost imperceptible sound suddenly emerged from inside the altar. The old man's face suddenly changed as a look of disbelief filled his expression. Quickly, he verified that what he heard was not his imagination, but to his dismay, the result was the same. His face suddenly turned ugly, as a hint of sadness was concealed within it. "It has been so many years. Have you awakened once more?" He suddenly murmured as he watched the altar, as if speaking to a familiar old friend. "What power wakes you?" As the old man spoke, he turned his head to a certain direction, and after gazing there for a moment, his body flickered and disappeared. A short while later, a stream of light broke through the sky out of Misty Valley and headed towards the direction of Heavenly Monster Mountain. Deep inside Heavenly Monster Mountain, Xianxia stood firmly in place, eyes glancing coldly from side to side. He left the place where he fought Ban Qing and traveled deeper into the Heavenly Monster Mountains, hoping to find a safe place to hide. Yet he did not get what he wanted. It did not take long for someone to find him. These men may not be as strong as Ban Qing, and they posed no threat to Xianxia, who could clean them all up with his soul-devouring insects and soul-splitting saber. But this annoying situation still put him on full alert. He thought he was being cautious enough, yet his tracks were still exposed, as if these people knew exactly where he was. This made him wonder whether something on his body had been tampered with, and that was why they kept coming after him. But when he checked, he found nothing. What's more, other than Ban Qing, whom he had met first among these people who had this ability, the others couldn't do this. If it really was Ban Qing's doing, then when did he do it? Thinking back, Yang Kai could only assume that Ban Qing had done something to him while they were fighting him, and whatever mark he left was somehow attracting these people. With this in mind, Yang Kai no longer cared about the danger and went deeper into the heavenly monster mountains. Unexpectedly, half a day later, he was stopped by two monster beasts. These two monster beasts were not ordinary, and upon releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai could tell that they were both 12th order. In other words, these two monster beasts had power equivalent to Emperor Realm cultivators. One Ban Qing was enough to give him a lot of trouble, but now there were two monster beasts with power similar to him. Yang Kai could not help but groan. Gao Shueting said that there were many existences in the heavenly monster mountains that even she did not dare to provoke, and that statement was clearly no exaggeration. It was true that there really were many high-level existences in the heavenly monster mountain. It was just that Yang Kai had not encountered them since he had been moving about near the outer periphery. The two monster beasts were extraordinary in their own right. The one on the left was shaped like an ape with wide shoulders like an iron wall, extraordinarily long arms, and thick hair over its body like steel needles. Its glaring eyes were even larger than a man's fist, and as it stared at Yang Kai, it flared its nostrils and huffed out hot air, appearing quite hostile. The one on the right had a flawless white body, a sacred deer that looked as if it was carved right out of white jade. Not a single trace of any other color covered its body. It was an amazing sight. There was even a faint halo enveloping the surface of its body, which gave its viewers a bedazzling feeling, and two short antlers on its forehead, adding a beautiful finishing touch like dotting eyes on a dragon painting. These two monster beasts were clearly of different species, yet they stood together peacefully. At once, they leapt in front of Yang Kai, blocking his way, as well as locking his retreat on the left and right. It was astonishing, yet similarly stressful for Yang Kai. Being 12th order monster beasts, there was a high chance that these beasts had gained sentience. In other words, monster beasts who could arrive at this level could already control their primal instincts and were able to think and act just as humans do. Of course, there also existed special monster beasts that were strong yet still maintained their beast-like instincts instead of gaining sentience. Yang Kai had no idea whether these two were sentient, but he hoped they were, otherwise he could only look for an opportunity to escape. When these two monster beasts appeared, the purple squirrel was terrified and scurried to hide behind Yang Kai's back. It was only a 9th order monster beast, so when faced with strong existences like these 12th order monster beasts, it would naturally feel oppressed. When confronted, the ape-like monster beast suddenly snorted from its nostrils, accompanied by a gust of hot air visible to the naked eye. In a short amount of time, within a radius of several dozen kilometers, the temperature rose sharply. Yang Kai's heart dropped and he began circulating his strength on instinct. Had enough fun yet? The ape suddenly spoke human words. Yang Kai's face changed slightly, immediately understanding that the monster beast in front of him had already gained sentience. Moreover, it was exceedingly intelligent. With this, it meant he had the opportunity to try and negotiate with the other side. Considering all this, he quickly cupped his fists and spoke. This, Senior. The other party was a monster beast, so it seemed a little inappropriate to call it Senior. However, Yang Kai could not think of anything else to call it, so he had to settle for that. But before he could finish his sentence, the ape glared coldly at him and Emperor Realm level pressure pressed down on him as it snapped sharply. Silence! Ugh! Yang Kai had no idea what to say, nor did he understand what it meant. What's more, the question it had asked just now was also quite strange. At this moment, the sacred deer on the right suddenly made a move. A different, soft power emanated from the sacred deer, dispersing the pressure that the ape had put on Yang Kai. At the same time, the body of the sacred deer suddenly burst into a bright glow. After a brief moment, this mass of light transformed into a tall and beautiful woman with snow-white skin in a long white dress. The woman the sacred deer transformed into looked to be in her early 20s, and her beauty was not enchanting, charming, nor decorous, but holy, as if she did not belong to the mortal world. Free of earthly contaminations, not disrupted by the mundane. She was like an immortal fairy who descended from the sky. Be careful, Yuan Fei. What if you hurt the young master? After transforming into her human form, the sacred deer glared at the ape and rebuked it. Humph! If he gets hurt, he deserves it. The monster beast ape called Yuan Fei grunted as he responded, his thick hair standing on end defensively. A moment later, in another burst of light, the giant ape transformed into a middle-aged man that looked about 40. His face covered with a malevolent aura and his body covered in crude clothes. Compared to the sacred deer, the human form he took lacked the slightest beauty. But there was no denying it was rugged and boasted great power, making it both a simple and practical form. Yang Kai wasn't too shocked when the two monster beasts assumed human forms. Rather, he could only glance at them suspiciously and ask, "Young master." In the next instant, though, he seemed to understand something. The woman transformed from the sacred deer looked at Yang Kai and said with slightly parted lips, "Young master, it's time to return home." Yang Kai did not move nor did he reply, understanding that the other party was not speaking to him. The fidgeting purple squirrel on his back peeked out its small head and looked at the woman as it hung off Yang Kai's shoulder. The woman smiled and said, "Please don't be afraid. Sir may be very angry this time, but he says that as long as young master returns with us obediently, then he will let you go without punishment." The purple squirrel opened its mouth and squeaked a few times, the meaning unclear, so Yang Kai did not understand. "You dare try to bargain with us?" Upon hearing what it said, though, Yuan Fei glared and rolled up his sleeves as if he was ready to attack, shouting loudly, "Don't you stop me this time, Bai Lu! I have to teach him a good lesson." As he said that, he really did seem like he was going to rush over and beat down the purple squirrel. The purple squirrel was so scared that it quickly shrunk its head back, latching onto Yang Kai's back with its two paws, trembling. Now, Yang Kai understood completely what was going on. The purple squirrel that he encountered by chance was clearly a big figure, since there were actually two Emperor Realm monster race dispatched to look for it. And, from how they were addressing the purple squirrel, it seemed to be the son of some master of this heavenly monster mountain. And this master was most likely the ruler of Heavenly Monster Mountain. Yang Kai's heart was completely shaken. On the other hand, Bai Lu and Yuan Fei were very well matched in their roles, one coaxing, one threatening. It was clearly not the first time these two were doing this, as they had already completely cornered the purple squirrel. Seeing that Yuan Fei really was about to rush over, Bai Lu quickly said, "Come to me quickly, young master. Elder sister will protect you." As soon as those words left her mouth, Yang Kai felt the weight on his back disappear. The purple squirrel shot out like a purple light and rushed into Bai Lu's embrace, shrinking into her arms and only daring to peek his head out to eye Yuan Fei warily. He actually fell for that? Yang Kai was speechless. Yuan Fei also stopped and glared at the purple squirrel and snorted, "Don't let me catch you, or I'll peel your skin off." As soon as those words came out, the purple squirrel didn't dare to leave Bai Lu's arms anymore, and its body tensed up even further. Despite that, though, it still stuck out its tongue mischievously at Yuan Fei. "This is the 11th time." Bai Lu looked at the purple squirrel with a helpless face and said, "Young master, please don't do this again. After all, it's very dangerous outside." After she said that, she eyed Yang Kai, whether intentionally or otherwise, and went on, "Sir has also said that he will allow you to go out when you grow a little more, so just wait a bit longer." Naturally, the purple squirrel nodded its head like a little chick pecking at the warm embrace and words of the beauty, looking meek and obedient. "You should apologize to Sir when we return, otherwise, no one can save you," Bai Lu added. Naturally, the purple squirrel listened. The two 12th Order monster race masters looked at each other, silently communicating with their eyes. "All right, we've settled young master's matters. So..." Yuan Fei glanced coldly at Yang Kai as he spoke, bellowing, "Little brat, who gave you the guts to come into the depths of Heavenly Monster Mountain? Yang Kai's face paled and he quickly cupped his fists. Reporting to Senior, Junior is currently being pursued and had no other recourse but to travel deeper into your territory. If I have offended Senior, then I hope that... Enough! Yuan Fei did not want to listen to Yang Kai's explanation at all, waving his arms as he shouted angrily, "It seems you humans have already forgotten the Heavenly Monster Accord from all those years ago." Heavenly Monster Accord? Yang Kai frowned. He was merely a cultivator born and raised in the outside world who had come to this mirror world for life experience. So how would Yang Kai have known about this Heavenly Monster Accord? He had never even heard of it before now. You really forgot. When he saw this, Yuan Fei's face turned cold and he became extremely angry. As I thought, humans cannot be trusted. Since that's the case, I will send you off personally. With these words, he pushed out the power in his body, causing a rich pressure to spread out in an instant. The pressure Yuan Fei released was very different from Ban Qing's. The latter's pressure was cold and piercing, while the former was fierce and domineering, giving Yang Kai a feeling that it was unavoidable and unstoppable, as if he would be ground to dust by it. Ji. Right at that moment, the purple squirrel hiding in by Lu's arms suddenly shouted anxiously, gesturing at Yuan Fei with its two little paws and looking nervous. Ha! Upon hearing this, Yuan Fei could not help but pause his actions. A moment later, much of his anger dissipated and he looked Yang Kai up and down, asking suspiciously, "You saved our young master?" Yang Kai understood in an instant that the purple squirrel probably told him what had happened earlier, and without hesitation, he nodded. It was a coincidence of sorts. Yuan Fei couldn't help but frown, showing a troubled expression. To him, if a human wandered into the depths of Heavenly Monster Mountain, that human had to die. If two humans came, two humans had to die. It was completely reasonable to him because humans were the ones who broke the Heavenly Monster Accord in the first place. But this human had apparently saved the life of his young master, making things difficult. It would be against his will not to kill him, but killing him would put the young master in an awkward situation, and if the Lord were to hear of this later, Yuan Fei would definitely be scolded. Immediately, he scratched his head and turned his eyes to Bai Lu to ask for help. Bai Lu was also frowning slightly. After mulling over it for a moment, she said, "You have done us a great service for saving our young master. However, young man, I see many traces of monster beast sources on your body. You must have killed many monster beasts on your journey." Yes. Yang Kai was flustered, having no idea how she could tell. But obviously lying now was not a good idea, so he could only nod and say, "Yes. The monster beasts that you killed are the children of our Heavenly Monster Mountain. So slaughtering them is a great insult to us, and you should be held accountable for this." "Then I will kill him." Yuan Fei's murderous intent rose up instantly. Bai Lu raised her hand, stopping him. "He has merits and demerits. As for how he will be dealt with, we will let the Lord decide." "Good." Yuan Fei nodded at her words. While speaking, he reached a hand out towards Yang Kai without delay and drew him over. Yang Kai immediately felt a strong force wrap around him, but he did not try to resist and simply surrendered obediently without a fight, allowing Yuan Fei to grab him. If he raised a fuss in front of these two 12th Order masters in this situation, it would definitely do more harm than good. Not mentioning whether Yang Kai could even escape under the noses of these two. Even if he did, where would he go? And from the behavior of that woman called Bai Lu, she did not seem unreasonable. With the good he did saving the purple squirrel's life, he believed there should not be any danger to his life. At most, he may be held in Heavenly Monster Mountain and would only have to wait some time before he was released back to the world outside. When he was captured, Yang Kai did not forget to say, "Junior has something to inform two seniors about." "Spit it out then," Yuan Fei shouted coldly. "As far as Junior knows, there is someone named Zhou Dian in Heavenly Monster Mountain who brought many masters with him to search for." "Zhou Dian." Yuan Fei and Bai Lu's faces instantly changed as they gasped in shock, as if this person's name was an extremely scary existence to them. Yuan Fei even pulled Yang Kai before himself and glared at him, asking, "Are you sure that Zhou Dian is here?" I haven't seen him before, but I bumped into someone called Ban Qing. I heard about Zhou Dian from him. You met that bastard Ban Qing? Yuan Fei's eyes widened. Bai Lu quickly said, if Ban Qing is already here, then Zhou Dian must be here as well. I'm afraid the other three have definitely come as well. What are they looking for? The last question was directed at Yang Kai. They seem to be looking for something called the Star of Calamity. As for what that is, Junior is also at a loss. Yang Kai told them truthfully. Star of Calamity? Bai Lu's eyebrows furrowed. Yuan Fei, however, looked at Yang Kai in astonishment and said, if you met Ban Qing, how are you still alive? This little brat is good at escaping. Yang Kai smiled awkwardly. Yuan Fei swept his eyes over him, not knowing whether he should believe him or not. On the other hand, the eyes of the purple squirrel in Bai Lu's arms were flitting around, looking at Yang Kai with a knowing light, but clearly not trying to expose him. Regardless of whether what you say is true or not, we must report this matter to our lord. Yuan Fei, bring him with us and let us return. Bai Lu called out and immediately turned around, speeding off towards a certain direction. Carrying Yang Kai, Yuan Fei followed closely behind. Senior, Junior can walk by himself. Yang Kai felt uncomfortable being carried by Yuan Fei this way, so he hastily suggested this. Yuan Fei looked at him and did not say much, but he did release him. Yang Kai had no intention of running away either. Instead, he pushed his strength to keep up with the two monster race masters. The two masters seemed to be trying to test if Yang Kai really was good at escaping, so they gradually increased their speed, making no attempts to accommodate him at all. Yang Kai also tried his best to follow them and actually did not lag behind too much, surprising the two. Somewhere in Heavenly Monster Mountain, Zhou Dian was still riding majestically on his 9-horned dragon beast, his profound gaze staring towards a certain place in Heavenly Monster Mountain. A thick fighting intent was flowing out from his body, almost dense enough to materialize. There were 5 other masters scattered in the vicinity around him. These masters gathered in a round open space, and there were many people with troubled looks on their faces sitting on the ground within that circle. Even though these people sitting on the ground did not have their movements restricted, the energy fluctuations coming from their bodies were incredibly weak, and there were seal marks on each of their bodies, clearly suppressing their strength. All of them were cultivators captured by Zhou Dian's subordinates while from the Heavenly Monster Mountain. Xiao Baiyi, Murong Xiao, and Chun Muji were among them. The 3 of them did not dare to say anything to each other either, but their eyes would drift from time to time, passing on some unknown messages. They felt very wronged as they had come to this divine Ascension mirror world to train, yet now they were inexplicably captured. Since going their separate ways, the 3 of them have been hunting monster beasts in Heavenly Monster Mountain, absorbing their soul sources to strengthen their own souls. But all of a sudden, several Emperor Realm Masters suddenly appeared and attacked them without a word, eventually capturing them, sealing their strength and dragging them to this place. This unexpected disaster made Xiao Baiyi and the 3 feel both helpless and worried at the same time. They had no idea how Yang Kai and Xiaoshang were, or whether they ended up in any fatal danger. While the 3 of them were communicating silently, a stalwart figure suddenly appeared a short distance away. It was a majestic figure sporting flaming red hair, carrying a cultivator in his arms as he walked. Xiao Baiyi and the other 2 fixed their eyes in that direction, and their faces could not help but change. And that was because they realized that the person being carried was Xiaoshang, and the guy who caught him was probably the Lian Yan that they heard of before. Facing an Emperor Realm Master, despite Xiaoshang's strength being extraordinary for his realm, he was obviously unable to escape and had wound up caught. From his appearance and current state, he had undoubtedly resisted a lot earlier, and he seemed to have suffered a lot of injuries. There, Lian Yan carried Xiaoshang over, tossed him directly into the crowd, and told his subordinate to keep an eye on them before walking straight towards Zhou Dian, standing behind him and waiting silently. Murong Xiao and the others wanted to ask Xiaoshang about his condition, but when they saw Xiaoshang slowly shaking his head at them, they quickly stopped. It would be better for them not to reveal that they knew each other at this moment. If they concealed this, then they may be able to take advantage of that when the enemy was unprepared to do something, The fresh breeze was pleasant, but Lian Yan, who was standing behind Zhou Dian, was filled with tension and worry. And the reason for that was because he could feel the nearly tangible fighting intent flowing out from Zhou Dian's body. Naturally, this was a master's instinctive thirst for battle. Lian Yan knew what Zhou Dian was thirsting for. Since the creation of this divine country, the entire world had been unified and wars had ended. As a third-order Emperor Realm Master, Zhou Dian had very few opponents. And among those few, there was at least one here in Heavenly Monster Mountain. Zhou Dian, whose desire for slaughter had been silent for 2,000 years, had awakened again. Lian Yan knew how terrifying Zhou Dian was at this moment, so as his subordinate, he did not dare to disturb him in the slightest, or the consequences would be unthinkable. With time, his fighting intent also continued to rise, until a certain moment, that dense murderous intent suddenly retracted, no longer appearing in the slightest. Lian Yan could not help but breathe a sigh of relief as he felt like he was about to fall over. "How is the situation?" Zhou Dian asked without turning back. "Reporting to Sir, everything is mostly good." Lian Yan bowed and responded. "Mostly?" Zhou Dian turned his body and glanced over at Lian Yan from the corner of his eye. This look and this tone of voice caused Lian Yan's complexion to change in an instant, and he quickly cupped his fists, saying, "It is Ban Qing. We lost contact with him." Upon hearing this, Zhou Dian raised a brow and asked, "How did this happen?" "Subordinate does not know." Lian Yan showed a bewildered look. Ban Qing had still been sending messages from time to time prior to this, but after a certain point he suddenly disappeared. "Perhaps he is currently pursuing someone powerful." Zhou Dian nodded and said, Ban Qing's concealment ability is unparalleled, so anyone who can make him so cautious is most likely an extraordinary character." "Very well. This king has been resting for a long time, and since I was ordered by the Lord King himself, I may have to take a trip there myself." As he spoke, he urged the 9-horned dragon beast beneath him, and they marched towards the depths of Heavenly Monster Mountain. "Sir!" Upon seeing this, Lian Yan shouted. "What's wrong?" Zhou Dian looked back at him with impatience. Lian Yan said, "Further ahead we'll be reaching into the range of the Heavenly Monster Accord. If we invade that region, the monster race—" "Why would this king fear the monster race?" Zhou Dian scoffed and mocked Lian Yan. "Lian Yan, you've lost your guts." Lian Yan's face changed several times before he gritted his teeth and said, "Allow this subordinate to accompany Sir." Zhou Dian watched him deeply and nodded with satisfaction. "Good! Keep up!" After saying so, he continued moving forward. The 9-horned dragon beast's movements may seem very slow, but its speed was getting faster and faster, and soon after, it had already turned into a stream of light, dashing ahead towards the horizon. Deep in the depths of Heavenly Monster Mountain, in Heavenly Monster Valley. This was the core of Heavenly Monster Mountain, as well as the residence of Heavenly Monster Mountain's Lord. The architecture of this place adhered to the monster race's rough and wild nature. All the buildings were big and showy, very different from how the houses in the human world were structured. Outside the valley, a group of blood wolves at peak 11th order were on guard to prevent anyone from entering the valley. Yuan Fei and Bai Lu were unhindered as they brought Yang Kai all the way here. After all, these two were well-known existences in Heavenly Monster Mountain, and as the subordinates of the Monster King, who would be blind enough to dare stop them? On the other hand, many of the masters of the monster race showed looks of curiosity and disgust towards Yang Kai, whom they brought with them. They had come a long way, but each member of the monster race they encountered was glaring at Yang Kai, baring their fangs at him. If he did not follow the 2 12th Order Masters here, then he would likely have been torn to pieces. Not long after, the group arrived at the center of Heavenly Monster Valley. A gigantic tree that grew up into the sky could be seen here. The roots of the gigantic tree were so wide that they could fill up several halls. Yang Kai looked up, but he couldn't see the top of the tree at all as its canopy seemed to stretch dozens of kilometers in diameter. Yang Kai could not help but feel surprised at this magnificent sight. After arriving here, Yang Kai could clearly feel that the world energy in the vicinity had grown much denser, sending a pleasing sensation through his soul avatar. He understood immediately that this humongous tree was some kind of divine object. And a door could be seen somewhere on the roots of this giant tree. The wooden door was currently closed shut, and when they arrived here, Yuan Fei turned his head and said fiercely to Yang Kai, "Boy, wait here and don't move unless you're told. Otherwise, don't blame me if you lose your life." Yang Kai nodded his head quietly and calmly. "Zhi zhi zhi." The purple squirrel called out to Yang Kai, probably trying to tell him something. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "Don't worry about me. Just take care of yourself. Let's go," Bai Lu said as she reached out to open the door, walking into the tree cave. In a few moments, Yang Kai was the only one left in place. He looked up at the giant tree, eyes filled with wonder. The monster race around him gradually gathered as well, each with a fierce glint in their eyes, not bearing kind intentions. In only 10 breaths of time, Yang Kai was surrounded by 3 layers of monster race masters, and even on the tree branches overhead were occupied with those observing him. Some of these monster race masters had assumed human form, maintaining the appearance of a person, but some maintained their beast forms and pulsed ferocious intent from their bodies. But no matter who it was, they only stared at Yang Kai and would only show obvious malice. None really tried to do anything to him. No matter what, Yang Kai had been brought here by Yuan Fei and Bai Lu, so before these 2 masters said so, the other monsters present wouldn't dare move without permission. The division of hierarchy was more obvious in the monster race than the human race, and the strong had absolute dominance over the weak, with only rare exceptions like the purple squirrel, who had an extremely powerful background. The scene before him brought back some memories for Yang Kai. He found that no matter where he went, there seemed to be an irreconcilable conflict between the human race and the monster race. Different races had different customs, and the fact that you were seen as an outsider if you were of a different race was commonplace everywhere. Even though he was surrounded by countless monster race masters though, Yang Kai still did not show the slightest sign of fear. However, the soul-devouring insects inside of his sleeve were clearly growing restless for some reason. They may be excited at how so many masters with powerful souls were nearby, so they were beginning to show signs of escaping Yang Kai's control. Noticing this, Yang Kai's face paled as he hurriedly activated his spiritual energy to suppress them. As soon as the soul-devouring insects began to riot, all the surrounding monster race masters couldn't help feeling a chill all over their bodies, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This feeling had come so inexplicably and yet so clearly that the monster race masters were certain it was no illusion. The presence of something that posed a threat to their lives was truly present. This discovery caused the faces of many monster race masters to darken as they eyed Yang Kai vigilantly and suspiciously, as if trying to reassess him. On the other hand, Yang Kai was trying his hardest to suppress the soul-devouring insects. He could not use the 7-colored soul-warming lotus with so many eyes on him, so he couldn't help but feel the need to groan. It was at that moment that a surging pressure like a great ocean wave suddenly descended from the sky, enveloping Yang Kai. This pressure came so abruptly that Yang Kai was suppressed on the spot before he could even react. But soon, he found that this pressure did not hurt him, while instead the soul-devouring insects were calmed. The owner of that pressure seemed to have helped him intentionally. Peak 12th Order. Yang Kai was astonished. Even though he had already guessed that the power of the heavenly monster mountain's lord was not low, he was still shocked to learn the true level of this master. This divine Ascension mirror world was a bizarre realm where living beings had no physical bodies, only souls. However, even without a physical body, a master of this level had appeared. Yang Kai could not help but feel a little lost in thought, wondering if perhaps a great emperor-level character had ever been born here. If one had, then how much would they know about his situation? And, just as these thoughts flashed through his mind, a silhouette appeared in front of him. It was Bai Lu. Bai Lu's beautiful eyes swept around the place before she said to Yang Kai, "Follow me. The Lord wants to see you." Bai Lu said nothing more and turned to lead the way. Following behind her, Yang Kai entered the tree cave. Only then did he realize that the interior of this tree cave was actually a completely furnished cave mansion. The lowest floor seemed to be something akin to a large hall, but it was empty without a single soul at this moment. And, in the corner of the hall, there was a spiral staircase that led up. Yang Kai had no idea how far up the staircase went, but at least from where he stood, he could not see its top. Yang Kai followed by Lu up the flight of winding stairs. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, they finally reached the end of the stairs where a large hall was presented in front of them. The side door of the hall opened along the trunk of the tree with light shining in from the outside. Yang Kai took a glance at the outside and found that this place was already a few thousand meters from the ground. Everything at the bottom was hazy and hard to get a clear view of. And, after walking to this place, he felt an almost palpable gaze locked onto his body. Yang Kai instantly became alert and turned his head over just to see a middle-aged man dressed in simple clothes. This man had a plain appearance with black hair and was standing with his hands behind his back, looking at him, smiling. Yuan Fei, who arrived before them, was standing by his side respectfully with a restrained expression. The Lord of Heavenly Monster Mountain. This thought popped into Yang Kai's mind inexplicably. Though he could not see anything from this middle-aged man that catched his eyes, Yang Kai was sure, despite this man looking just like any ordinary man from a crowd, that he was a peak 12th order monster race, equivalent to a 3rd order Emperor Realm Master, the very one who made a move earlier to assist him. This man was the Lord of Heavenly Monster Mountain, and similarly the father of the Purple Squirrel. Composing himself, Yang Kai bowed and cupped his fists, saying, "Junior Yang Kai greets Senior." Hearing this, the middle-aged man nodded lightly, but did not speak, instead just slowly raising his hand and pointing it towards Yang Kai from a distance. Before Yang Kai could understand what he meant, his face suddenly changed and he hurried to circulate his spiritual energy, creating an invisible barrier in front of himself. There was a soft thud as a strong force impacted him, easily breaking Yang Kai's defenses. Yang Kai was taken by surprise and staggered backwards, but very soon he was able to steady himself. That was because the move he received was not anything substantial and only broke his defense. In other words, it posed no threat to him at all, almost as if it was just to probe him. "Senior, what do you mean by this?" Yang Kai asked with a frown. His opponent was a peak 12th order master, so what was the point in testing him? This man could obviously tell Yang Kai's strength at a glance. The middle-aged man raised a brow and looked a little suspiciously at Yang Kai as he asked, "Why didn't you use your soul-type artifact?" Yang Kai responded, "I met with a strong enemy prior to this, so that artifact was destroyed and is no longer." Before he finished his sentence, Yang Kai suddenly widened his eyes and stared at the middle-aged man in astonishment. "Senior, you?" At this moment he suddenly came back to his senses. He actually mentioned soul-type artifact. This was not a word that cultivators of this divine Ascension mirror world should know. Soul-type artifacts were only used by cultivators from the outside world. Due to the lack of materials to refine such artifacts, it was impossible for such things to exist here, let alone for knowledge of them to spread. But this middle-aged man actually spoke about an existence he should not have known about. How could Yang Kai not be shocked at this? "What's wrong?" The middle-aged man smiled. "Do you think that this king knows nothing?" Though he spoke vaguely, Yang Kai understood exactly what he meant and was instantly shocked in place, not even knowing how he should respond. "It seems," the middle-aged man nodded lightly, "you really aren't a person of this world." Yang Kai drew a sharp breath and cupped his fists. "Senior has good eyes. Only, how did Senior?" The middle-aged man smiled and, as he raised his hand, a long sword suddenly appeared in it. Light flowed from this long sword and its energy fluctuations appeared truly extraordinary. This long sword was not a coalescence of his spiritual energy. In other words, it was a physical object. A soul-type artifact? Yang Kai's eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. To think a cultivator could bring out a soul-type artifact in this world, and a very high-grade one at that. From the energy flowing out from the longsword, this sword had already reached the level of an Emperor artifact, as Emperor Pressure and Emperor Intent, which complemented well with the middle-aged man's own aura, were present. To the side, Yuan Fei and Bai Lu were also staring, dazed at the longsword. As the subordinates of Heavenly Monster Mountain's lord, they naturally knew that their lord had such a valuable treasure. However, even with their qualifications, it was still rare for them to see it. In the past few hundred years, they had only seen it twice, so counting today it would be 3 times. Yuan Fei and Bai Lu had no idea what this treasure was and where it came from, but they knew that it was incomparably sharp and powerful, much stronger than the weapons formed out of their spiritual energy. They could not understand why their lord had shown this treasure to a mere human like Yang Kai, whom they met today for the first time. Moreover, what did their lord mean when he said he wasn't a person of this world? They exchanged glances, both seeing confusion in each other's eyes. Correct. This is a soul-type artifact. The middle-aged man nodded at his words. Then he gently rubbed his finger on the blade. Under the resonance of energy, the blade of the sword trembled incessantly as if it had its own spirit. 800 years ago, I won this from a guy called Wen Zishan. The middle-aged man smiled and watched Yang Kai's demeanor closely as he spoke to explain. I wonder if you know him as well. So, it was Temple Master Wen. Yang Kai's mouth twitched, suddenly understanding everything. According to Wen Zishan, it was he who came to the Azure Sun Mountain range 800 years ago and discovered the Divine Ascension Mirror, deciding to stay then and found Azure Sun Temple. During that time, Wen Zishan likely entered the Divine Ascension Mirror as well and traveled here, bumping into this middle-aged man. As for how this artifact ended up in the hands of this man, Yang Kai did not know. He was an interesting guy. The middle-aged man spoke with a hint of nostalgia on his face. It felt like we were old friends the moment we met. We got along very well, and this king won this longsword from him through a bet. However, according to how you would describe it, this artifact was only Dao source grade high rank back then. It took several hundred years of refinement and nurturing for it to be promoted to an emperor artifact. Yang Kai said, thoughtfully, it seems like Senior knows a lot about the outside world. The middle-aged man laughed happily. This king casually poured a few jars of monkey god wine for that Wen Zishan, and he spat out everything, almost revealing the color of his underwear. How much do you think this king would know? At that comment, Yang Kai's face twitched, but it also allowed him to ease his tension and no longer worry about his own safety. This man did not seem to hold any malice towards him, and also knew Temple Master 1 and the world outside. This alone made it impossible for him to do anything to him. May Jr. ask how to address Senior? Yang Kai cupped his fists together and asked with a serious face. This king is called Yi Quan. When the middle-aged man responded, he had already put away the artifact. He went on, I heard from Yuan Fei that you saved my son's life outside? It was merely a coincidence, Yang Kai said truthfully. Still, you saved his life. As he said this, Yi Quan reached behind his back and urged a small figure over. Yang Kai looked over and found it to be a young child about 2 years old, wearing short sleeves and short shorts. This child had a pink and chubby face as well as small and short exposed hands and legs with fair and tender white skin. This was a little boy with his hair tied up in a sky-shooting braid. He looked extremely cute. Little purple squirrel? Yang Kai looked at the boy and raised his brows. The little guy seemed a little shy, and after glancing at Yang Kai, he quickly hid behind Yi Quan, grabbing at the corner of his father's clothes with his little hands, looking around curiously. As soon as he saw this, Yang Kai was sure he was the purple squirrel. However, he seemed too nervous to be as close with Yang Kai as before. What did father tell you? When Yi Quan saw this, he gave little purple squirrel a tap on the back of his head, causing him to stumble out from behind. When Bai Lu saw this, she immediately had a hurt look on her face. The little guy was pouting, seeming as if he was about to cry. Yi Quan gave a soft hum. This scared purple squirrel so much that he quickly stopped his tears and sniffled. Looking at Yang Kai, he tried to stutter a few words. No need to thank me, you helped me a lot too. So really I should be the one thanking you, said Yang Kai gently as he looked at the little guy. A life-saving grace will be remembered for the rest of our lives, Yi Quan said while stroking the little guy's head, saying in a serious voice, Remember that. Purple squirrel quickly nodded. Bai Lu, Yi Quan called out again. Subordinate is here. Bai Lu quickly stepped forward. Bring the young master out to play. Watch over him carefully, don't let him run off again. I have some things to talk about with this young man, Iquan said. Yes, Bai Lu answered before waving at the little one. This time, he was very well behaved and trotted obediently in front of Bai Lu, reaching out his hand so she could hold it. Before leaving, he turned back to take another look at Yang Kai as Yuan Fei followed them out. After leaving the hall, Yuan Fei asked Bai Lu in a whisper, "Did you understand what Sir said?" Bai Lu shook her head and looked at him, asking, "Did you?" Dark lines appeared on Yuan Fei's face as he muttered, "If you didn't, how do you think I would? However, I vaguely remember 800 years ago that a human came here. He had a long talk with Sir for 3 days and 3 nights before leaving." "Yes, I remember that as well. That man was very strong, no worse than Sir at all." Bai Lu also nodded lightly. "Strange, what is a soul-type artifact? Why does Sir seem to be implying that that human brat has one too? But why don't masters like us understand it? What are you worried about? If it is something we should know, then Sir would have told us." Bai Lu glared at him. "That's true." Yuan Fei nodded. "Yaya." The little guy who was being pulled along by Bai Lu suddenly interjected at this time. Hearing this, Bai Lu said, surprised, "Young master, you mean to say that this Yang Kai boy used a soul-type artifact previously in a battle?" "Yaya." The little guy nodded his head vigorously. "What does it look like? Tell us." Yuan Fei instantly felt excited and asked a bunch of questions. But who knew that the little one would only look at him and coldly snort? He turned his head to the side, looking like he didn't want to talk to him at all. At the hall in the center of the tree cave, Iquan invited Yang Kai to take a seat. Iquan was very enthusiastic and Yang Kai did not stand on ceremony either. Even though there was such a large gap between their cultivations, Iquan had never been the type to care about petty things, so he did not mind. Then, he pulled out a jar of wine like it was a magic trick as well as 2 cups, pouring one for Yang Kai and himself. "Is this the monkey god wine that Senior mentioned before?" Yang Kai's eyes lit up, taking a deep breath to feel the wonderful aroma washing over him. The fragrance of wine that permeated through the air also seemed to have a great effect on his soul. It actually made him feel incredibly good when the aroma blended into his body. "It is indeed." Iquan smiled and picked up the cup in front of him, taking a sip before saying proudly, "The things we produce here are very different from those on your side, but they have their own special characteristics. The spirit monkeys in my heavenly monster mountain spent a great deal of time and effort to brew this monkey god wine. It is very beneficial to one's soul." "The glass is not full, Senior." Yang Kai looked at Iquan a little apologetically as he motioned to the cup in front of him. That is because Iquan only gave him half a cup when he poured the wine. "Ha ha!" Iquan laughed as he looked at Yang Kai. He said, "Speak after you drink this half cup. If you can drink more, then this king will not be stingy." When he heard this, Yang Kai understood immediately that this monkey god wine was probably going to be strong, not something an ordinary cultivator could withstand. In Iquan's opinion, as a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, Yang Kai should only be able to handle half a cup. When he thought of this, Yang Kai did not say anything more. Picking up the cup in front of him, he began to drink slowly. The spirit wine was sweet as dew, yet it rushed to his head like ice when he swallowed it down. A cold feeling gushed up from his throat to the top of his head, and Yang Kai could not help but shake spiritedly. Yet, when the wine entered his belly, it brought about a burning force that traveled through his limbs and bones. Even after it circulated through his body a few more times, the wine continued going strong. Yang Kai muffled a soft grunt and felt the changes inside himself carefully. He discovered that his soul avatar, which had sustained some damage from his earlier fight with Ban Qing, was restoring itself at a speed visible to the naked eye. This discovery lifted Yang Kai's spirits, and he drank the rest in a large gulp without hesitation. "Slow down." Seeing this, Iquan quickly shouted lest Yang Kai drink too fast out of greed and cause some harm to himself. But before he finished speaking, Yang Kai had already put his cup down and did not say anything, just sitting in place. His eyes closed as a look of reminiscence appeared on his face. "AI?" Iquan sighed and said to himself, I still wanted to talk to you more about the outside world, but it looks like I'll have to wait a few days. He figured that, with Yang Kai's meager cultivation, downing half a cup of monkey god wine would knock him out for at least a couple of days before he sobered up, which made him laugh bitterly. He had taken out the monkey god wine with good intentions because he could see that Yang Kai had been in a big fight and his soul avatar had some slight damage to it. But he didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk either. What does Senior wish to talk about? Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and the light in them was perfectly clear, without the slightest hint of looking drunk. Ha! Iquan was stunned, looking strangely at Yang Kai as he asked suspiciously, "You're fine. Do I not look fine, Senior?" Yang Kai smiled. While speaking, he had already reached out without any trace of politeness and grabbed the jar of monkey god wine in front of Iquan, poured himself a full cup, and drained it down while praising, "Good wine!" With 1.5 cups in his belly, his soul avatar had already recovered completely. Not only that, but his soul had also been tempered thoroughly. As for the excess energy contained in the monkey god wine, it all poured into the 7-colored soul-warming lotus. Just as it absorbed the precious soul jade, the soul-warming lotus absorbed the energy contained in the monkey god wine and fed it back to Yang Kai's soul avatar in a tempered manner so that he could continue to benefit from it. This? Iquan was completely dumbfounded and was staring at him slack-jawed. At his level of power, few things could surprise him, but Yang Kai's actions still left him puzzled. He could not understand how Yang Kai did not get drunk. After all, even when Zishan, who came here for the first time, did not dare to drink the fine wine of the heavenly monster mountain in this way. No one could withstand such wanton consumption. But Yang Kai had done so and appeared as if nothing had happened. It seems like, you really are different from the rest. Iquan quickly understood and smiled. I don't think all the people from the outside are like you, right? Naturally not. Yang Kai laughed. Junior is? He hesitated for a moment, not knowing how he should explain it, only able to say after a while, I have my own tricks to digest it. Iquan nodded and did not continue questioning him. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, he saw Yang Kai grabbing the jar with both hands. Junior gives his thanks to Senior for this gift. As soon as he said that, he had already begun drinking from the bottle in large gulps. Watching him chug down the wine, Iquan could not help his mouth from twitching. In a dozen breaths, Yang Kai had already finished the bottle of monkey god wine without leaving a single drop behind. Wiping his mouth impatiently and looking eagerly at Iquan, he then asked, This wine, is there any more of it? You still want more? Iquan glared at him and said, You little brat, what do you take this for? Each bottle of monkey god wine takes the entire spirit monkey clan 100 years of work to brew. What you've drunk already cost them 100 years of effort. Even the good-tempered Iquan was angered by Yang Kai's shameless demands. If he had known this was the case, then why would he have brought out such a treasure to entertain Yang Kai? He was simply turning blue with regret in his guts. Ahem. Yang Kai lightly coughed. With a bit of alcohol still in his system, he said, Senior is such a great man, there's no need to be so stingy. He only dared to speak such words since he saw that Iquan did not hold any malice towards himself. Otherwise, speaking to any other peak 12th Order master would have gotten him into deep trouble. Stingy? Iquan's eyes almost popped out as he fell speechless. After pondering for a moment, though, he grinned and said, Good. If you can tell me more about the outside world, then this king will reward you with another bottle. How about it? Truly? You mean what you say, Senior? Yang Kai was instantly energized and asked, May I ask what Senior would like to hear about? Anything. Iquan was not too demanding. The last time when Zishan was here, he told this king a bit about the outside world, but unfortunately that guy had gotten drunk and yammered on like a madman. It was unbearable. Then let's start with Temple Master Wen. Yang Kai smiled and lightly coughed, assuming the manner of a storyteller as he began to regale Iquan with stories. The star boundary was vast, and it had not been long since Yang Kai arrived there as well, so he didn't know too much, not even knowing the names of all 10 great emperors yet. But even so, the information he had was still beyond Iquan's reach. And, As Iquan was keen to know this information from the outside world, he naturally listened in with great interest. Azure Sun Temple, Heavenly Martial Holy Land, Orthodoxy Temple, Star Soul Palace, and even the entire Southern Territory, Xianxia told him all he knew. The people, the places, all sorts of strange stories, the sealed worlds used for tempering oneself, both big and small, as well as the ancient legends passed down through word of mouth. There was no order to what he spoke of, as Xianxia basically just rambled on about whatever came to mind. Iquan just listened quietly, only interrupting him at special times to ask a few questions before gesturing for him to go on. Everything about the outside world seemed to make the Lord of Heavenly Monster Mountain curious and eager. The wonders of a body of flesh, the mysteries of all sorts of secret techniques and artifacts, these were all new and fresh to beings of this world who had no idea what such sensations would be like. Like that, their conversation lasted a whole day and night. Xianxia's mouth was dry from all the talking, so he naturally sought an opportunity to ask for another bottle of monkey god wine from Iquan to moisten his throat. Iquan was also listening with great attention, and all the information that he had never been exposed to before fascinated him. The divine Ascension mirror world was too small, so the world outside was undoubtedly more exciting. Moreover, Iqian was already a master at the peak of the 12th order. Beyond that was the realm of great emperors. Such a height could not be reached through hard work alone, it also required incredible opportunities. When trying to reach such a height, anything new you could see and experience may become a critical breakthrough point. The opportunities that Iquan needed were not available in this world, but they might be present in the outside world, so he was incredibly interested in traveling there. Perhaps, in a world that he had never seen before, he may be able to find his path towards becoming a great emperor. Unfortunately, he was only a soul without a physical body, so there was no way he could survive for long in the outside world. Once he left this place, he would be rejected by the outside world principles and quickly die. When Zishan came here, he told this king that if he could create a body that could integrate perfectly with this king's soul, then this king may have a chance to escape from this prison. This king wonders how much you know about this. At a certain moment, Iquan suddenly interrupted Xianxia and asked, "The flesh incarnation pill?" Xianxia raised his brows and casually answered, "What is this flesh incarnation pill?" Iquan's eyes suddenly lit up and he hurried to ask, Xianxia thought for a moment and continued, "It is a type of spirit pill. Due to the special situation here, spirit pills do not seem to exist." "And what are spirit pills exactly?" Iquan was completely baffled. "Let's put it this way. There is a special group of people called alchemists in the outside world who use special tools and techniques to fuse certain types of herbs, removing their impurities, and enhancing their essences before condensing the latter into pills. These pills are called spirit pills, and they generally have far stronger effects than their raw materials." "Then is the flesh incarnation pill a type of spirit pill?" Iquan asked with glowing eyes. "That's right. Supposedly, if a being like Senior were to ingest it, then Senior could grow a body for yourself." "Supposedly?" Iquan raised a brow. Xianxia laughed. "Because this spirit pill is only rumored to exist. No one has ever made it." "Why?" Iquan was suddenly furious. "Those alchemists can't all be useless, can they?" Xianxia said helplessly. "As they say, even the cleverest woman cannot cook a meal without rice. The primary ingredient, flesh incarnation fruit, for the flesh incarnation pill has already gone extinct, so how could alchemists refine the flesh incarnation pill?" "How could that be?" Iquan found it hard to accept Xianxia's explanation. "Isn't the outside world vast and rich?" Xianxia laughed. "That is what they say, but some things are left to fate." Iquan looked disappointed and was out of it for a while, but soon, as if he thought of something, he looked spiritedly at Xianxia and said, "Since you know so much about the flesh incarnation pill, you wouldn't happen to be one of those alchemists, would you?" "Well, sort of." Xianxia nodded and also understood what Iquan was trying to hint at, so he continued without needing him to say anything. "But Senior should know that alchemists are divided into different levels as well, just like cultivators. Different grades of alchemists can refine different grades of pills, and the flesh incarnation pill is an emperor grade pill, so it will require an emperor grade alchemist to refine. Right now, Junior is just a Dao source grade alchemist. So, Iquan raised his voice. This king can see that your cultivation is already extraordinary at such a young age. With time, it's not impossible for you to reach the Emperor realm. Why don't you refine a flesh incarnation pill for this king when that time comes? Yang Kai laughed bitterly and said, I would still need the materials. Then go find them. Iquan said matter-of-factly. This king is not afraid to wait, and I can afford to do so. You can refine the flesh incarnation pill whenever you find the flesh incarnation fruit. This king only needs you to agree to do this for now. Seeing him like this, Yang Kai's face could not help but turn serious. After a moment of silence, he said, Since Senior has said so, then Junior will do his best. But Senior may have to wait for a long time, and it may turn out impossible in the end. No problem. Iquan waved his hand and said, It's fine as long as you have the intention. As he spoke, he seemed to already be able to see a glimmer of hope and called out, Good! I'll gift you another bottle of wine. With those words, he placed another jar of monkey god wine in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai grinned and did not hesitate to down it. 3 bottles of monkey god wine went into his belly in just a short amount of time. So even though Yang Kai had the 7-colored soul-warming lotus to pad his stomach, he still could not avoid feeling a little drunk. Iquan looked at him with a gaze that had become more cordial, and he was just about to wave his hand to call someone over to bring Yang Kai down to rest, when suddenly his expression turned cold and he gazed towards a certain direction. Yang Kai noticed the change in Iquan's expression and could not help but look at him in confusion. Iquan did not move and only watched quietly for a while before he shouted in a cold voice, How dare he? Senior, what happened? Yang Kai asked. But before Iquan answered, he saw a monster race master suddenly fly in from outside, cupping his fists and quickly reporting, Sir, a human master has invaded. The Blood Wolf Guard are currently obstructing him. But the invader is strong. He seems to be. This king knows. Iquan nodded coldly and ordered, Tell the Blood Wolves to withdraw. They won't be able to stop him. Let him in. The monster race master did not hesitate to accept his order and immediately retreated. Yang Kai also came back to his senses at this moment and said with an ugly expression, Could it be? Zhou Dian came here personally. Iquan's cultivation was amazing, so a human master who could warrant his attention couldn't be anyone but Zhou Dian, and his guess was correct. Iquan nodded at his words. That's right. It's him. I can't believe he insists on breaking into my heavenly monster valley, even if it means going against the heavenly monster accord. Could it be that he's coming for you? Me? Yang Kai pointed at his own nose. Having mostly sobered up, he laughed nervously. I don't think that's likely. Junior only arrived here 10 days ago, and I didn't even know Zhou Dian existed before that. Why would he come for me? This king does not know either. But, while speaking, Iquan's figure suddenly shook and he appeared before Yang Kai, patting him on the shoulder. Yang Kai was slightly taken aback, but he knew that Iquan would not do anything to harm himself. So he did not show any intention to resist. A gentle force came in through his shoulder and traveled through his limbs. A short while later, Iquan said with an ugly look on his face, As expected, you were marked. It was this king's negligence. At that moment, Iquan's hand suddenly shook. At the same time, Yang Kai grunted. However, he could clearly hear a strange noise coming from inside of him. Following that, his whole body inexplicably relaxed as if breaking free from some shackle. My son told me that you had an encounter with Ban Qing but managed to kill him somehow. Ban Qing is not only proficient in concealment and assassination but also tracking. During your encounter, he seems to have left a mark on you, and Zhou Dian has been following that mark. Hearing this, Yang Kai's face sank. He had suspected that Ban Qing had done something to him, but he was unable to find out what he did with his ability. But now it seemed that it was no fluke that those cultivators were able to track him. Only, from what Iquan said just now, he seems to have found out about the secret in his body a long time ago but never pointed it out. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you, Senior, Yang Kai said somewhat apologetically. Iquan waved his hand and said, "No need to be. You are my son's benefactor, so this king will treat you well. As for Zhou Dian, humph. He's an arrogant man who cares nothing for rules in the first place." After saying that, he went on, "As for how you killed Ban Qing, this king can only say those insects you possess must never be left here no matter what. If you happen to enter this place again, then do not bring them here unless you can fully control them. This place was once nearly destroyed because of those insects." Yang Kai was shocked. Soul-devouring insects existed here? You call them soul-devouring insects? Iquan wore an apprehensive look. No matter what they're called, they are a scourge to this world. The insects you have right now are not that strong, so this king can help you suppress them a little, but that is as much as I can do. If they really grow to their full potential, then even this king will become nothing but food to them. Junior understands. Yang Kai nodded seriously. You'd best remember well, Iquan warned. Iquan. At that moment, an earth-shaking voice suddenly came from outside. The voice was not very loud, but it contained a deafening pressure like muffled thunder. The sound set off a storm that swept through the surroundings and reached the ears of every monster race in Heavenly Monster Valley, even causing the ears of some weaker monster race to bleed. Humph! Iquan turned his head angrily towards the source of the noise. Sharpening his spiritual energy, he transformed it into a piercing strike as he shouted, "Zhou Dian, who gave you the guts to raise your voice in my Heavenly Monster Valley? Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha!" The sound of Zhou Dian's laughter flowed over. Initially, it was calm, but as Zhou Dian's emotions fluctuated, it turned into maniacal laughter filled with madness. Hong hong hong. A loud blast came from outside, shaking the entire world. Yang Kai stood in place with an ugly look on his face. His soul avatar felt extremely unstable and the light at the surface of his body was flickering, worrying him so much that he quickly moved his strength to protect himself. Only then did he feel a little better. When he came back to his senses, Iquan was no longer there. Quickly rushing out of the hall, Yang Kai floated midair and scanned his surroundings. Very quickly, he spotted Iquan and Zhou Dian. At about 50 kilometers from where he was, Iquan, the supreme leader of the monster race, stood there quietly, motionless, his aura restrained, making him seem as deep as the abyss. Not far in front of Iquan was a stalwart figure riding an extremely powerful monster beast, looking down at Iquan from above. Zhou Dian. Even though Yang Kai had never met this person, he knew exactly who he was. Moreover, Zhou Dian was the only person who would garner such caution from Iquan. Behind Zhou Dian, an equally tall, red-haired Emperor Realm Master stood behind him. His fiery red hair was so distinctive that Yang Kai understood immediately that he must be Lian Yan. The two human masters were surrounded by countless monster race masters, each of which was looking at the two men with fierce, unconcealed hostility. But none of the monster race dared to make a move. Zhou Dian was calm as can be, and even Lian Yan did not appear the least bit nervous, just smiling disdainfully as he looked around, occasionally meeting the eyes of the monster race masters and shooting provocations at them. Very good. Iquan, you're still looking healthy after all these years. This general is very pleased. Zhou Dian was the first to speak, smiling as if the one standing before him was not his life nemesis, but rather a friend whom he had not seen for a long time. Iquan sneered. This king has been quite well since the last time we met, but I wonder, Zhou Dian, has your injury healed? As soon as he said that, the smile on Zhou Dian's face suddenly disappeared and a piercing icy coldness descended from the sky as if it wanted to freeze everything in this world. He took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes, and when opened them again, Zhou Dian had restored his calm. Seeing this, Iquan could not help but raise a brow. Iquan, if it were possible, this general would not have come to your heavenly monster mountain. But this time it was the Lord King's order, so I had no choice but to come, Zhou Dian said. The order of your master is none of this king's concern. The heavenly monster accord states that no human may enter more than 30,000 kilometers into heavenly monster mountain. This is what was agreed upon between our races, but today you have personally broken that agreement. Is the word of you humans really worth nothing? Iquan bellowed furiously. Zhou Jian grinned and replied, "This general has only come for one person today. Hand him over and this general will leave immediately. This general will not make things hard for your heavenly monster valley. You should have seen it as well. This general did not kill a single member of your heavenly monster valley. This should be enough to show the sincerity of this general. Is the heavenly monster valley a place for you to come and go as you please?" Iquan raised a brow. "This king knows who you are really here for. However, he is an esteemed guest of this king. Want to take him away? First, ask this king if he agrees." "Honored guest." Zhou Jian raised his brow at those words and looked derisively at Iquan, saying, "Are you joking?" He thought that Iquan was just spouting nonsense. After all, he could clearly see Xianxia from 50 kilometers away and measure his cultivation. How could a human brat like him be worthy of becoming Iquan's honored guest? "This king is in no mood to joke with you?" Iquan coldly snorted. "Hurry and get out of my heavenly monster valley, or don't blame this king for not being polite with you. It seems like you won't be handing him over." Zhou Dian's eyes deepened slightly, and he stared at Iquan coldly. Iquan scoffed and did not say anything more. Spiritual energy was slowly releasing from his body. At this point, both masters knew that it was useless to rely on words. The only way they could settle this was with their strength. Everything in the world seemed to freeze in that instant as third-order Emperor realm pressure and peak 12th order pressure clashed, invisible sparks flashing across both masters' eyes. Many monster race masters could see that things were turning for the worst and used their movement skills to scatter in different directions without even looking back. Lian Yen did the same as well. His entire body turned into a red flash that retreated several dozen kilometers away. Endless fighting intent and incredible pressure filled the air, causing space to tremble and the earth to crack. Even from 50 kilometers away, Xianxia could still feel chills all over his body. If not for the fact that he did not have a physical body right now, it might have been hard for him to even breathe. Two figures flashed over. Yuan Fei and Bai Lu, the two monster race masters, appearing on his right side and nodding lightly. The two were not as hostile or disdainful to him as before. Their only purpose here was to protect Xianxia. "What about Purple Squirrel?" Xianxia asked. "Young master has already been taken to somewhere safe," Bai Lu answered in a gentle voice. "Please do not worry, young Master Yang." She even changed the way she addressed Xianxia, quite clearly due to how Iquan had called him his honored guest earlier. Xianxia nodded lightly and turned to look towards the distance. This was a battle between third-order Emperor Realm Masters, so just observing it would be of great benefit to him. That is why he did not want to miss the slightest thing. And at that moment Zhou Jian moved. Leaping up from his mount, he rushed high into the air before releasing a burst of light from his body. When this light dissipated, a double crescent halberd appeared in his hands. The halberd was more than 10 meters long and was as thick as a man's arm, extremely powerful and heavy, while the aura it released was enough to shake the world around it. Once the halberd came out, the aura around Zhou Dian's body increased dramatically. The energy surrounding his body rippled incessantly like boiling water. This was not a soul-type artifact, but a weapon coalesced from Zhou Dian's own spiritual energy. This halberd had followed Zhou Dian for many years, during which he had nourished it with his own essence, as well as that of others. Even though it was not a soul-type artifact, it had many wonderful uses and was in no way inferior to an ordinary soul-type artifact. Holding the halberd in his hand, Zhou Dian laughed maniacally as his entire body turned into a stream of light and he swooped down towards Iquan, the sound of wind roaring as he descended. "Iquan, let this general see whether you've improved over the years." This attack was like a meteor, causing every cultivator who witnessed it to feel a stabbing pain in their eyes, regardless of their cultivation, as if its radiance would blind them if they continued to stare. At the same time, coldness spread through their whole bodies. Xianxia was astonished. Even though he had seen a few third-order Emperor Realm Masters during his time, he had never witnessed a full-blown fight between such masters. At this moment, he finally understood how powerful third-order Emperor Realm cultivators truly were. Naturally, they were almost invincible existences in this world. And, in the face of this amazing attack, Iquan stood his ground, not moving at all. Gazing forward, his eyes filled with contempt, as if Zhou Dian wasn't even worth his care. Chi. A thick column of energy visible to the naked eye gushed out from the point of the double-crescent halberd, transforming into the shape of a dragon and letting out a dragon roar, brandishing its teeth and claws towards Iquan. "Seems like," Iquan said indifferently, "you've forgotten the pain of your wounds after the scars have healed. Have you forgotten that battle from 2,000 years ago?" As he said this, Iquan flicked his wrist. A simple strike was Iquan's response to the approaching dragon. The difference between the two attacks was obvious, giving one the impression of an ant trying to shake a tree. However, when the simple slash greeted the dragon, it exploded into a dazzling light that covered everything in the world, swallowing up the latter. The dragon howled and hissed while Zhou Dian's face took a sudden turn. Iquan's body flashed and disappeared. Ding! A light noise rang out, and when the crowd regained their vision, they were shocked to find that Iquan was already in front of Zhou Dian. A long sword in his hands stabbed through the pole of Zhou Dian's double-crescent halberd, creating a spark. Zhou Dian looked confused at the sight of the long sword. 2,000 years ago, he fought with Iquan, but at that time his opponent did not use such a weapon. What's more, this long sword did not look like it was made of condensed spiritual energy at all. Zhou Dian was at a loss about what sort of treasure this was supposed to be, but his bewilderment lasted only an instant. Any hint of hesitation in a battle between masters of this level could cost one their life. So Zhou Dian quickly composed himself and flicked his halberd to open some distance from Iquan. At the same time, a blast of pure spiritual energy shot towards Iquan, clearly some kind of soul secret technique. Iquan's face turned serious as he pushed the spiritual energy inside his own body to condense his own soul secret technique. Both were third-order Emperor-level masters, and even though there was a slight difference in their strengths, it wasn't big, so everyone watching couldn't tell who had the upper hand right now, only that these two were risking their lives facing one another. An unfinished rivalry spanning 2,000 years finally erupted in the clash today, leading to this dazzling sight. When their souls clashed, the halo around the bodies of the two people flickered, but their hands never idled. When the long sword and halberd clashed, loud metallic bangs rang out. Thrusting, slashing, chopping, and parrying met with sweeping, cleaving, and hacking. The long sword and halberd of the two masters clashed with such ferocity it seemed the entire world was shaking from the blows. In a flash, they clashed hundreds of times. Figures flickered back and forth as metal meeting metal produced a series of incessant rings. The sword was quick and flexible, like a shooting star that could appear from all directions, overwhelming a person. The halberd was fierce and domineering, releasing great waves that threatened to drown its opponent. The two figures met in battle and intertwined to create a dazzling and brilliant scene. All the cultivators watching this battle were mesmerized. Outside the battlefield, everything fell silent. Sometimes the clash seemed slow and methodical, at others it was as quick as lightning. The visual contrast seemed to have an invisible impact that shook the heart and soul of each viewer. Woo! Eventually, some monster race masters couldn't stand watching anymore, turning their faces away as they staggered backwards, holding their chests as if they had suffered some kind of injury before slowly closing their eyes, not daring to observe any longer. And, as time passed, more and more people entered such a state. At first, it was only the early 11th Order masters, then it was the mid-level, finally the high-level. After a stick worth of incense, even 12th Order masters like Yuan Fei and Bai Lu had to push their internal strength to ease the discomfort they were feeling so that they could continue spectating this match. They would naturally not miss this amazing battle for anything. Suddenly, Yuan Fei seemed to catch something from the corner of his eye and hurriedly turned to look at Yang Kai. The next moment, Yuan Fei's jaw suddenly dropped, because he realized that Yang Kai had his eyes wide open and was still watching the scene without so much as a blink. His clear eyes reflecting the battling figures of the two masters several dozen kilometers away, as if he was completely unaffected by everything. Not only that, there were times when Yang Kai would reveal a thoughtful expression on his face. This stunned Yuan Fei, and he could not help but give Bai Lu a quiet jab. What? Bai Lu was paying close attention to the battle when Yuan Fei interrupted her, so she shot him a look of displeasure. Yuan Fei nudged his head to the side. Bai Lu looked over and also revealed a look of astonishment. This little brat. He's a bit strange, Yuan Fei whispered to Bai Lu. Even at their level, they more or less felt some discomfort watching such a battle for longer than a few moments, so how could someone like Yang Kai, who was weaker than them, watch in such a relaxed fashion? As expected of someone Sir had his eyes on. He really is something special. Bai Lu gently nodded. As the two of them talked, a pure spiritual energy diffused from Yang Kai's body, enveloping him completely. From that spiritual energy, an indescribable flavor gradually came out of it. Mysterious changes seemed to be happening quietly inside of Yang Kai's body. Emperor intent, Yuan Fei exclaimed. He can actually use Emperor intent? In that instant, Yuan Fei seemed to have discovered something shocking and shouted in surprise. Bai Lu's beautiful eyes also lit up as she stared at Yang Kai and nodded after a good while. Indeed, even though it is still very shallow, it is without a doubt Emperor intent. He isn't going to advance to the Emperor realm here, is he? The sudden thought gave Bai Lu a shock. Breaking through in this divine Ascension mirror world was not easy, and each time one did, they had to cross a life-threatening ordeal. One mistake could lead to one's soul being extinguished. Since the beings here did not have physical bodies and could not rely on a powerful flesh body to resist the world energy baptism, they had to depend entirely on the strength of their own soul. A far more dangerous prospect than those from the outside. Iquan was still fighting at this moment. But if something happened to Yang Kai during his breakthrough, the two of them wouldn't be able to explain themselves. For a moment, Bai Lu couldn't help but feel on edge. She was obviously overthinking things, however. Yang Kai was not a native of this world, so even though he entered this place using his soul avatar, he still had his own physical body. Even if he was influenced by the Emperor intent from the battle of the two masters, even if he could allow his soul to forcefully break through to an existence comparable to Emperor realm, it was impossible for him to actually reach that level before his physical strength had improved to a certain extent. Dao Source Realm, Emperor Realm. A hurdle existed between the two great realms. If one described the spiritual energy of a Dao Source Realm cultivator as a wooden stick, then the Emperor realms would be an iron stick, the latter naturally better in terms of both strength and sturdiness. The difference between first-order Dao Source Realm, second-order and third-order was only the length and thickness of each wooden stick. If you want to transform your wooden stick into an iron stick, then you would have to cross a severe hurdle. Yang Kai was now stuck somewhere in the middle of that hurdle and had not fully crossed it yet. But because he was able to produce Emperor intent, it was as if his wooden stick had been plated with a layer of iron, receiving some capital available only to Emperor realm cultivators. Yet his strength was very different from that of a true emperor. However, this was enough. Apart from him, who else in this world had managed to release Emperor intent as only a first-order Dao Source realm? Even the renowned 10 great emperors of the star boundary had not managed such a feat. Being able to produce Emperor intent will naturally be of great benefit to his future growth. Yang Kai was still watching the battle fixedly. The scene was unbearable to the others who received great impact on both their vision and souls. But for him, it was just like a breeze that he didn't need to pay too much attention to. As soon as the impact reached his soul avatar, it would be resolved by the 7-colored soul warming lotus and had no negative effect on him at all. Time passed slowly. Yang Kai's harvest grew bigger and bigger as the battle between the two masters seemed to have reached a fever pitch, with Zhou Dian letting out raging howls from time to time in unbridled anger. Iquan's face had also turned grave and was not as relaxed as before. Brandishing his sword, he unleashed his secret techniques while fighting all out with Zhou Dian. With Yang Kai's cultivation, his eyes were simply incapable of telling who was the stronger one in the fight or who had the upper hand, only feeling that the two of them were fighting on equal ground. However, from Zhou Dian's increasingly agitated voice, it seemed things were starting to look bad for him. But this was only to be expected. From what he heard earlier, Yang Kai deduced that Zhou Dian and Iquan had once fought 2,000 years ago, and at the time Zhou Dian should have been injured while Iquan came out the victor. Now, 2,000 years later, while both of them must have grown, Yiquan had obtained an Emperor-grade soul-type artifact, so he had an even greater advantage than before. It was only logical that he could overpower Zhou Dian, but it was difficult to tell who would be victorious. Yang Kai estimated that this fight may last for half a month to a whole month. But he was quite happy to see this situation because he would have plenty of time to continue watching and learning. Right at that moment, however, Yang Kai furrowed his brows. He could keenly sense an irregular fluctuation of energy in the air. His face sank, but when he turned to look at Bai Lu and Yuan Fei, he discovered that both of them were unresponsive. At first, he thought it was just his own imagination, but when he was about to continue focusing on watching the fight, Yang Kai suddenly realized something. With a sudden change in his expression, he shouted to the front, "Senior, watch out!" Before he could finish shouting, another figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the fierce battlefield. It was a tall and mysterious figure wrapped completely in a black cloak, making it impossible to distinguish their body type. And the person was wearing a strange mask that looked extremely terrifying. The person appeared without warning, and even Yiquan and Zhou Dian had not detected traces of this master's arrival. If not for Yang Kai having cultivated the Tao of space and reaching a high proficiency in it, he too may not have detected the intruder. Even though the other party was acting secretly, Yang Kai was still able to keenly catch the traces of spatial fluctuations from when this master arrived. But his warning came too late. As soon as the masked person appeared, they arrived at Yiquan's side and launched their palm towards him. Yiquan's face changed dramatically, and he retracted his long sword, stabbing it to the side in an attempt to parry the attack. He had already inserted his full strength into this attack. Above the blade, energy surged like a tsunami that could seemingly swallow both heaven and earth. The masked person's blow was immediately blocked, but Zhou Dian took this opportunity to attack. With one thrust of his halberd, he broke through Yiquan's defenses and stabbed a hole right through his shoulder. "Woo!" Yiquan grunted as he shot backwards. Regaining his footing, he reached out to hold his shoulder in an attempt to relieve his injury. But how could he instantly diffuse the full force of a blow from Zhou Dian so easily? The shock clearly injured Yiquan quite severely, and his spiritual energy was escaping from the wound, flowing out into the world. "Sir!" The faces of Bai Lu, Yuan Fei, and the other monster race masters changed dramatically as they all cried out in alarm, their figures flickering as they wanted to go up to him and help. But Yiquan raised his hand to stop them. With a slightly dark gaze, he eyed the masked intruder who had just appeared, his expression fluctuating. Zhou Dian did not seem to have expected this masked person to appear here either, and took advantage of Yiquan's surprise to launch a sneak attack. If this person had not interfered, then it would have been simply impossible for him to hurt Yiquan like this. Zhou Dian was not happy about this, as he felt as if his fight had been tainted. Even so, Zhou Dian did not dare to show any disrespect and cupped his fists. "Lord King, why have you come?" "To assist you," the masked man responded in a slow and hoarse voice like scraping metal, which was hard to listen to. "But subordinate." Zhou Dian seemed like he still wanted to argue. The masked man interrupted him directly though. "No need to say more. Take him back to the palace. I'll take over from here." He had no choice but to obey the Lord King's order. So Zhou Dian grit his teeth and shout, "Yes." With that, he glanced helplessly at Yiquan before speeding towards Yang Kai. Yiquan turned his head slightly and looked at Yang Kai, only making a simple remark, "Run!" Yang Kai also reacted quickly. Even though the changes in the scene before him were extremely abrupt, he had already vaguely understood everything in a short amount of time. This masked man was undoubtedly Zhou Dian's master, and also the person who issued the order to capture him. If this person could order Zhou Dian to do his bidding, then he would obviously be a third-order Emperor Realm Master as well, and from the appearance of this person and the methods he used to sneak attack Yiquan, his strength was probably a notch higher than Yiquan's. With this person holding Yiquan back, Zhou Dian would have no more opponents. How could Yang Kai hesitate? When Yiquan told him to run, he teleported 1,000 meters away in a flash. At this moment, he had no choice but to expose his cards. In front of a third-order Emperor realm like Zhou Dian, Yang Kai could not think of any other way to escape other than using space principles. And, while Yang Kai was fleeing, Bai Lu and Yuan Fei stood side by side to block Zhou Dian's advance. When they saw their enemy approach, both masters let out a deep cry and revealed their true forms in a flash of light. Roaring, Yuan Fei took the initiative to meet Zhou Dian head-on and block him. Bai Lu, on the other hand, radiated a white light. It was not known what sort of mysterious secret technique she was using, but she was somehow able to envelop a 30-kilometer radius in pure white light, making it impossible to distinguish between north and south. "Anyone who blocks my path shall die," Zhou Dian shouted furiously as he brandished his halberd. Chi chi chi. A sound cut through the void. Yuan Fei had not even come close to Zhou Dian when a stray attack knocked him far away, his life or death unknown. The difference in strength between the two was too great. Yuan Fei was simply no match for Zhou Dian. And, 2 cracks later, the white world also shattered. Bai Lu's body reappeared, but the light surrounding her body had become extremely dim. Zhou Dian turned into a stream of lights, crossing over both their heads and pursuing Yang Kai without even shooting them a glance. "He's fast." Zhou Dian was surprised at how far away the figure in front of him was. He originally thought that a master like himself would be able to capture Yang Kai with ease, but only now did he realize that this first-order Dao Source Realm brat had some kind of extremely profound movement skill. Once his movement skill was used, this boy seemed capable of ignoring space and instantly moving from one place to the next. Yuan Fei and Bai Lu were also able to buy him a little time, which allowed Yang Kai to almost escape the range of his divine sense. "Interesting," Zhou Dian coldly snorted, increasing his already lightning-quick speed further. On the other hand, Lian Yan, who had arrived with Zhou Dian, had also quietly escaped from Heavenly Monster Valley when he noticed things turning for the worse, while everyone was still recovering from the shock. In Heavenly Monster Mountain, Yang Kai fled desperately using his space secret techniques every so often in order to expand the distance and conceal his aura. He did not dare to go in a straight line either and constantly changed directions in an attempt to shake off Zhou Dian. But it was all in vain. No matter how he moved, there was constantly a strong divine sense locked onto him. He could feel it on his skin without even turning around. Yang Kai understood now just how terrifying a third-order Emperor Realm Master was. The huge gap between Zhou Dian's cultivation and his own was not at all something he could offset by his mastery of space principles. The distance between them grew shorter and shorter, and for the first time, Yang Kai experienced what despair was. If he could not get rid of him even with his space divine ability, then he had no idea how else to flee from this crisis. The soul-devouring insects probably wouldn't be effective in this situation because Iquan had told him that they weren't strong enough yet. Iquan had even proved that by suppressing them earlier. Zhou Dian was a master at the same level as Iquan, so whatever Iquan could accomplish, Zhou Dian must be able to as well. He may have a little bit of hope with the soul-splitting saber, but it wasn't much. After all, Yang Kai had not refined it yet and could not unleash its full power. His previous success in attacking Ban Qing was due to Ban Qing's lack of strength, and also the fact that Yang Kai was able to catch him off guard. Yang Kai realized with some thought that he had no countermeasures left. It seemed like he could only surrender without a fight. And, while his mind was racing, Zhou Dian, who was pursuing him, managed to close the gap to just 30 kilometers. At this moment, Yang Kai suddenly felt a powerful force breaking through the air behind him. Looking back in a hurry, his face instantly turned blue, because he discovered that Zhou Dian had thrown his halberd towards him. Even though he had no idea what kind of mysteries could be hidden behind this attack, Yang Kai did not wait to find out and did his best to dodge it. Xiu xiu xiu. Yang Kai's figure flickered from side to side. With the addition of his teleportation ability, he was literally randomly appearing and disappearing. But he still couldn't shake off the halberd that was hurled towards him. The halberd rapidly approached Yang Kai. At this critical moment, Yang Kai had no choice but to use his spiritual energy to furiously attack the halberd in an attempt to block it. Honk! A loud bang erupted as Yang Kai's body shook and his face instantly darkened. However, the double-crescent halberd was completely unmoved and continued flying towards him. Yang Kai's desperate full-force attack was unable to even slow it down. In the next moment, the double-crescent halberd landed not far away from Yang Kai's body, digging itself halfway down into the earth. At the same time it landed, a shockwave exploded with it as its center. In just one breath, a 10-kilometer radius was filled with an invisible pressure that was so strong and domineering that Yang Kai could not help but feel a sense of despair, as he was unable to resist it. He wanted to teleport away again but was helpless to do so under this mysterious pressure. At the time, even his thoughts seemed to become slower. In his field of view, Zhou Dian's stalwart and tall figure walked over slowly, face as cold as ice. In just a few moments, he arrived before Yang Kai and looked down at him contemptuously, coldly snorting. "Little brat, you've got some skills, but that's all you have." With that, he flicked his wrist and a bolt of energy shot out from his fingertips into Yang Kai's body. Yang Kai's body stiffened. Instantly it felt as if his power was completely sealed and he was unable to move in the slightest. This was it. Yang Kai's face turned ashen. Even though he knew he may not be able to escape under this third-order Emperor Realm Master's pursuit, it was only now that he finally realized how insignificant he was when he was really caught. If not for his teleportation ability, he would have been captured almost immediately. A third-order Emperor was not something he could fight against right now. With a flick of Zhou Dian's hand, his halberd that was stuck into the ground flew back and was absorbed into his body. This general of the divine Ascension country turned his head again and looked towards the direction of Heavenly Monster Valley, his expression fluctuating a few times before he heaved a sigh with endless regret. Hoisting up Yang Kai, he sped off towards the edge of Heavenly Monster Mountain. He understood that since his Lord King decided to act personally, Iquan would have no chance. The terror of his Lord King was something that even he, as someone who had followed him for so many years, was unable to comprehend. If possible, Zhou Dian hoped that he would be the one to defeat Iquan, but he obviously would not get what he wanted this time. But what intrigued him even more was what secret Yang Kai held that drew his Lord King to leave the palace and take care of things personally. No matter how he looked at it, Yang Kai was nothing more than a third-order Dao Source Realm Junior with nothing out of the ordinary about him. If he had to say something, then this little brat's escaping secret techniques were quite impressive. If he hadn't come after him himself and instead tasked Lien Yen with it, this brat would undoubtedly have slipped away already. "Boy, do you know what Lord King wants from you?" Zhou Dian suddenly asked. Yang Kai was still feeling gloomy and answered in a frustrated tone, "I should be the one asking you that, right?" But before he could finish speaking, his body stiffened and he revealed a painful look on his face. That was because Zhou Dian actually made a move in secret and shocked him, causing him soul-rending pain. Realizing that he was currently under the eaves, Yang Kai didn't dare to act too arrogantly either, and could only say, "This senior? Have you got the wrong person? I heard you were looking for some star of calamity, but take a good look at me. Do I look like it? This general is only in charge of catching people. Everything else has nothing to do with me." Zhou Dian responded coldly, after a while adding, "Let me ask you, where's Ban Qing? You encountered him previously, didn't you? Why did he suddenly disappear?" "Ban Qing? You're talking about that short, sneaky guy?" Yang Kai pretended to play dumb and randomly blurted, "He was killed by a monster race master." Upon hearing this, a cold light flashed in Zhou Dian's eyes as near tangible murderous intent leaked from his body, causing Yang Kai to shiver. But very soon, he retracted the murderous aura and coldly snorted, "This debt will be settled sooner or later." He did not ask Yang Kai too much, nor did he suspect that Ban Qing had died at Yang Kai's hands, as he felt that was simply impossible. Only the monster race masters here would be capable of killing Ban Qing. An hour later, Zhou Dian took Yang Kai back to the place where he had set up camp. At this moment, the masters who followed Zhou Dian into Heavenly Monster Mountain had almost all gathered here. Yuman, Yuan Qing, and even Lien Yen, who had escaped from Heavenly Monster Valley earlier, were present. Only Ban Qing was missing, and right next to these people was a group of helpless and dispirited-looking people who had been captured and gathered here. When they saw Zhou Dian return, all of them quickly saluted him. Take everyone and head back to the palace. Zhou Dian gave an order and they gave a resounding response. When he said this, he casually tossed Yang Kai into the group of captured people. Chan Muji secretly gave Yang Kai a hand so that he wouldn't fall to the ground. Then he nodded lightly at him. Yang Kai looked around and immediately saw his other brothers and sister in turmoil. When they met each other's eyes, neither of them could help but laugh bitterly. None of them had expected to be caught by the local cultivators here after just 1 month of entering the divine Ascension mirror world. The group moved quickly, and within 10 breaths of Zhou Dian's order, they were already on their way to divine Ascension City. Along the way, Yang Kai did not dare to exchange information with the others and could only keep silent. Even now he had no idea why he and the others were captured, and what that star of calamity that Ban Qing mentioned was, but he could see that this was a very big matter, otherwise, there would be no need to send so many masters. Even Zhou Dian's masked Lord King had to come out himself. Yang Kai vaguely felt as if he had dropped into a huge whirlpool and would not be able to get out on his own. A day later, Heavenly Monster Valley. Yiquan sat cross-legged and adjusted his breathing, his face twitching slightly. Many monster race masters were looking at him with worried faces, all scattered around on high alert. Yesterday, Yiquan fought with Zhou Dian first before getting sneak attacked by the strange masked man, consuming much of his strength. In addition, he was also wounded by Zhou Dian during the masked man's sudden appearance and ended up receiving many injuries from the battle after that. If the masked man was strong enough to crush Yiquan, then Heavenly Monster Mountain would have lost its lord and would no longer exist. Fortunately, it seemed as if the masked man's only purpose was to capture Yang Kai and had no intentions of eradicating Heavenly Monster Valley, so he only fought Yiquan for a short while before retreating. Even so, the wounds Yiquan sustained were not something that could be healed overnight. While he was silently adjusting his breathing, Bai Lu's shout suddenly entered his ears. "Who goes there?" Yiquan opened his eyes in a flash and gazed straight ahead. There, a white-bearded old man with absolutely no energy fluctuations around his body stood, appearing just like a mortal who had never cultivated. Yiquan had no idea where this old man came from, but upon his arrival, he immediately headed towards him. The monster race masters naturally did not stand idly by. Yiquan was currently in a critical moment of recovery and could not be disturbed. Whether this old man was friend or foe, they could not let him approach any closer. So, after shouting those words, Bai Lu's body shifted and rushed towards the old man in a stream of white light. But what shocked her was that despite clearly intending to rush in front of and block this old man, when she came to a stop where she intended to, she actually found herself inexplicably just out of arm's reach of him. Xiao xiao xiao. Countless monster race masters also moved to intercept this old man. But none of them succeeded. All the masters who rushed towards the old man appeared not where they expected to, their eyes bulging wide as if they had seen something extremely terrifying in that brief moment. None of them saw any signs of this old man doing anything, but all of them had failed to even stand in his way. The old man seemed to be strolling casually, but in the blink of an eye, he had already arrived before Yiquan and was gazing down at him. "You?" Yiquan frowned and muttered, observing the man seriously, a bewildered look appearing on his face, but a moment later, his eyes flashed a brilliant light as if he had recalled something and he called out in astonishment, "You are?" The old man raised his hand slightly to stop Yiquan before placing it lightly on Yiquan's shoulder. A stream of pure energy slowly poured into Yiquan's body. Even a person as strong as Yiquan could not help but reveal a look of comfort as the heavy injuries on his body were being relieved under the nourishment of this power. A short while later, the old man removed his hand. Yiquan was shocked to find that the injuries to his body were mostly healed. All he needed now was some time to condition himself, and there would be absolutely no dark injuries left. Rising to his feet, he cupped his fists respectfully to the old man in front of him and lowered his head. "Junior Yiquan greets Senior. Many thanks to Senior for his assistance." Once these words came out, the entire Heavenly Monster Valley turned dead silent. Countless monster race masters stared at Yiquan in shock, unable to believe what they had just heard. Yiquan was undoubtedly one of the strongest masters in this world, and also one of the highest ranking. However, he had just called himself Junior in front of this old human man. Since that was the case, just what kind of seniority did this old man possess? Just who was he? The monster race masters were completely dumbfounded. If you recognize this old master, then you should know why I am here. The old man finally spoke and looked seriously at Iquan. Where is he? Iquan wore a look of shame and responded, he was taken away. The old man raised his brow slightly. Who took him away? And to where? To Divine Ascension Country's palace. The old man nodded lightly and said, it seems like I was still a step too late, but so be it. This old master will just have to take another short trip. As soon as he said that, his body suddenly blurred and then faded away, completely disappearing 3 breaths later. Iquan stood still in the same place with a look of awe on his face, but soon, he couldn't help letting out a loud laugh like roaring thunder, spreading throughout Heavenly Monster Valley, drawing the attention of countless monster race and monster beasts. None of the monster race masters knew why Iquan was laughing so merrily. Finally, unable to help herself, Bai Lu went up to him and asked in a soft voice, Sir, who was that old man? Of course, she could tell that the old man was an extraordinary person, but how could she not be aware of such an astonishing figure in this world? Iquan looked in one direction and slowly said, he is a survivor from the Holy War from 10,000 years ago. The Holy War. Bai Lu's tender body shook, her beautiful eyes filling with astonishment as she asked, you mean to say, he is? Iquan nodded lightly. With his protection, young boy will be safe and sound. But when he said this, he frowned again, as if worrying about a different matter altogether. Divine Ascension City inside the royal palace. 3,000 meters below ground was the divine prison, and the environment inside was harsh enough that it was unbearable for people. Although this was a place for prisoners, it was not used much because no one dared to break the law in the Divine Ascension country. And, if they did, they would be killed on the spot, so there was simply no need to use this place. Therefore, the divine prison was only a symbolic existence. Many people didn't even know whether it was just a myth or not. And right at this moment, Xianxia and several other people were confined in this divine prison, looking through the bars. All around were voices of the other captured cultivators shouting their grievances. But none of the guards cared. Taking this opportunity, Xianxia and the others quietly exchanged the information they had. In fact, there was not much information to begin with, only that Zhou Dian had led his men into Heavenly Monster Mountain in order to catch the Star of Calamity, which basically meant catching all the cultivators training in Heavenly Monster Mountain. Naturally, Xianxia and the others were not able to escape that disaster. They all felt as if they were fish caught in a pond. Since it had come to this, they could only put their hopes on Gao Shueting. This time, it was Gao Shueting who led the team into the Divine Ascension world, but she left alone after sending everyone into Heavenly Monster Mountain. No one knew what she went off to do afterwards. If she got the news, then she would definitely find a way to rescue them. But with her strength as a First-Order Emperor Realm cultivator, she may not be able to succeed. Xianxia could only hope that she was able to contact Wen Zishan outside. If Temple Master Wen entered the Divine Ascension world himself, then they might have some hope. While he was thinking so, footsteps suddenly sounded from outside the cell. At the same time, an Emperor Realm pressure descended on them. In an instant, everyone turned silent. The footsteps kept advancing inwards, and when they reached a certain position, a man stopped and pointed his hand at the cultivators being held in the cell. Lord King has given the order, bring him out. From the voice, it seemed to be General Yuman. Yes. The guards following behind him hurried to open the cell door. Xianxia and the others all paled in unison. This couldn't be helped as the person who Yuman was referring to was the chief disciple of Azure Sun Temple, Xiaxia. Very soon, Xiaxia's voice rang out as he seemed to be struggling, but after being taught a lesson from the guard, he behaved and resigned himself to fate. A short while later, Yuman took Xiaxia away. Xianxia and the rest were unable to do anything even if they wanted to help him, so they could only pray for his safety now. While they were waiting patiently, a quarter of an hour passed when footsteps emerged again. Yang Kai quickly looked over, and what he saw caused his expression to sink. He saw Xianxia with blank eyes, body shaking and spasming as if he had received great injuries. Under the lead of the guard, he returned to his own cell just like a walking corpse. No one knew what he experienced, but everyone naturally felt sad to see him like this. Morong Xiao had even cried in grief. She did not dare to call out to Xiaxing either and just cried in silence. Then Yuman returned again. This time, he stood in a certain spot and looked around for a while before pointing his hand and saying, "This one!" Xiao Bai paled. Because the person Yuman pointed at turned out to be him. The guard opened the cell door again and took Xiao Bai away. After they left, Yang Kai hurriedly looked at Xiaxing and called out to him quietly. But Xiaxing was completely unresponsive as if he had lost his soul. Junior brother Yang. Could something be wrong with senior brother Xia? Morong Xiao asked in worry. Yang Kai shook his head. I have no idea, but from how he looks, brother Xia seems to have endured some serious torture. Or perhaps his soul has become unstable. He should be fine after resting for a while though. But what piqued his interest even more was what Xiaxing had experienced that put him in this state. If the power in his body had not been restricted, then he could have let out his divine sense to investigate, and he might get some clues. Unfortunately, he couldn't use any of his strength now and could only rely on his own observations and speculations. He casually comforted Morong Xiao with a few words, but deep inside, he was anxious too. Looking around, no one seemed to be paying attention to this side. So Yang Kai quickly moved to a dark corner and sat down. The seal inside his body was set by Zhou Dian himself, so he couldn't unlock it on his own. It would require a master like Zhou Dian to help him. However, Yang Kai had his soul-devouring insects. The power of the seal was also a type of spiritual energy, so it could still be fed upon by the soul-devouring insects. As long as he could mobilize his soul-devouring insects, he would have hope of breaking the seal and restoring his strength. As for what to do next, he could only take things one step at a time. Time slowly passed by, and, while Yang Kai was attempting to break the seal with his soul-devouring insects, Chan Muji and Morong Xiao were taken away one after the other. Without exception, they ended up just like Xiaxing and Xiao Bai before them. Yang Kai had no idea what they experienced, but they were all listless and the look in their eyes was hollow after they returned. They wouldn't respond even when people called out to them, and it was clear they received a great impact on their souls and were unable to stay conscious. Yang Kai gradually realized that something wasn't quite right. The number of cultivators that Zhou Dian and the others captured in Heavenly Monster Mountain was somewhere between 70 and 80. And there were differing levels of strength among these cultivators, but the others were all safe. Only the ones from Azure Sun Temple were picked out. This clearly wasn't some kind of coincidence. They were being targeted. Was there some kind of noticeable difference between cultivators like them who entered the Divine Ascension mirror world from the outside and the natives? Yang Kai could not help but wonder about this. If this wasn't the case, how could the fact that everyone else remained safe be explained? Why was it that only Xiaxing and the others had to suffer? But he couldn't figure it out even if he thought about it. And, just as he was about to break the seal, Yuman suddenly came to his cell and pointed at him, grinning, "Take him away!" Just as before, the guard opened the cell and grabbed Yang Kai before walking out of the prison behind Yuman. Yang Kai was silent the whole way through, but he was constantly looking around. This place should be the royal palace of Divine Ascension country. The palace was very luxuriously decorated but appeared very quiet. Not many people seemed to be living here. Yuman led Yang Kai around some turns in the palace and they quickly arrived before a large hall. Once they arrived here, Yuman stopped and turned to look at Yang Kai with cold eyes. "Go in yourself, the Lord King is waiting." Yang Kai nodded and did not resist. After taking a few steps forward, he suddenly turned back to Yuman and asked, "This elder sister? Who are you calling elder sister?" Yuman smiled charmingly. The guard next to her did not even dare to look at her, as if afraid his soul would be taken away if he did. A look of fascination appeared on Yang Kai's face and there was astonishment in his eyes. It wasn't that he did it on purpose, but his power was being restricted and he had fallen under the influence of Yuman's charm technique. But Yuman did not dare to go on with this either. The Lord King was waiting inside, and she would not be able to bear the consequences if she were to delay things. In the next moment, Yuman withdrew her charm. Yang Kai's body jolted, and he came back to his senses. Deep inside, he was cursing incessantly. If his strength had not been sealed, then he would not have fallen to her temptation. He went on. This little brother wishes to ask, why did elder sister pick out all those people here? Is there anything different about them? Yuman curled her lip. I was just following orders. The Lord King's orders? Yang Kai raised his brows. Know your place, little brat. Yuman's face suddenly turned cold, changing faster than the flip of a book. Yang Kai said with nervous laughter, I was just asking. Hurry and get inside. Yuman bellowed. Yes, yes. Yang Kai answered repeatedly and stepped forward again. In a short time, he arrived in front of the hall and entered through the door. As soon as he entered the hall, Yang Kai could smell something fragrant enter his nose that caused his whole body to feel light and floaty, as if he were walking on clouds. And, looking up, Yang Kai could not help but feel surprised, because this hall looked no different than a woman's boudoir. The entire place was decorated effeminately with pink drapery, light red carpets, and gave off an elegant and noble aura. As soon as he entered the hall, a pair of bright eyes looked towards him. Yang Kai turned his head and looked towards that person. There he saw, a dozen paces away from himself, a pink gauze curtain which vaguely revealed a lazy figure lounging behind it. The bright gaze had come from this person. A powerful divine scene swept through Yang Kai as if it wanted to pass through his soul avatar and dig through the secrets hidden deep within. Yang Kai raised his brows, frowning, and thought for a moment before blurting out, The masked man! He suddenly realized that the power fluctuations emanating from the person behind the curtain were exactly the same as that of the masked man's he sensed in Heavenly Monster Valley. This person is the master who launched that sneak attack on Iquan. Yang Kai would never have thought that it would end up being a woman. Even though he could not see her face, it certainly couldn't be bad with such an enchanting figure. Not to mention, her strength was also astounding. Masked man? Huh? While Yang Kai was still shocked, a soft and pleasant voice came from behind the pink drapery, which seemed to be able to penetrate his mind and soul, setting off invisible ripples that made Yang Kai's head feel jittery for a long time. He took several deep breaths and concentrated to calm himself down once more. For you to call this queen in such a way is not unacceptable. The woman behind the curtain continued in an unhurried tone. Could Senior be the Lord, Queen of this divine Ascension country? Yang Kai's brow furrowed. Indeed, the other party admitted frankly. But no one knows the true face of this queen. Even Zhou Dian has never seen it. Yang Kai was stunned at this, but very soon he felt a bad feeling inside of him. Even though her words did not reveal any important information, it gave Yang Kai an ominous premonition, as if she had just revealed a big secret in front of him, one he would need to pay a heavy price for. Yang Kai could not help but laugh awkwardly. Junior is honored, but Junior wonders, why is Senior treating me so well? As he spoke, his mind raced, but he couldn't understand any of the critical points here. Because this queen must. The lazy figure lounging on the bed slowly sat up straight and beckoned to Yang Kai through the curtain. Come closer! Yang Kai frowned, his eyes filled with iciness as he said dully. Junior has no right to refuse, right? You can try. Yang Kai sighed and could only approach her slowly. And, as he walked forwards, he could clearly perceive a momentary unstable fluctuation in the woman's soul, as if she was expecting, even longing for something. The anticipation and longing were palpable enough to even destabilize the soul of a master of her level. But Yang Kai was not naive enough to think that the other party had taken a fancy to him. If that was really the case, then she did not have to go to such lengths. With the strength she showed before, she could easily make him behave however she wanted. If her eyes weren't on him, then it had to be something he possessed. When he thought of this, Yang Kai's heart clenched. When he reached the curtain, Yang Kai took a deep breath and lifted it up, looking inside. There, a short distance away, The image of the woman's face was instantly imprinted into his eyes. Xianxia could not help but feel a little dizzy, as the other party was indeed a country-destroying beauty. It was a flawless face that seemed so perfect it should not exit beneath the heavens. But the moment Xianxia saw this face, he had a strange feeling that he had seen it somewhere before. He carefully recalled the faces of all the Emperor Realm Masters he encountered, but Xianxia found none that matched, making him feel quite puzzled. When their eyes met, the woman's beautiful eyes burst with oppressive light that seemed to envelop Xianxia. Xianxia's body froze in place, and he felt as if he was about to fall into an abyss that would never end. Horrified, he quickly exclaimed, "Senior." But the woman did not pay him any heed to his protest and muttered excitedly, "You are the last one, so that thing must be inside your body. If I can obtain that treasure, then this queen will be able to refine this world and truly become its master. Be obedient and cooperate, and this queen may spare your life, even ensure you a lifetime of glory and wealth. But if you dare resist, then this queen will make you beg for death." At the last sentence, the woman's originally beautiful face became extremely hideous and her tone became ghastly, as if she was on the verge of going mad. On the other hand, Xianxia listened to her with a bewildered feeling. The last person, a treasure to refine this world. He had no idea what she was talking about at all. He had the intention to resist, but under the influence of the other party's soul pressure, even thinking was starting to become difficult, much less moving his body. The woman rose up, her tender body swaying as she moved in front of Xianxia. Raising a jade finger, she pressed it directly onto Xianxia's forehead. In the next instant, pure spiritual energy flowed into Xianxia's body through that finger. Xianxia's body trembled and his eyes became dull. It felt as if his entire body had just been subjected to unbearable torture, endlessly shaking and spasming. A heavy consciousness and confused thoughts were all normal reactions when one's soul was disturbed. Xianxia finally understood why Xiaxiang and the others would end up as they did. They clearly went through the same thing. How could a Dao Source Realm cultivator be able to withstand the assault of a third-order Emperor Realm Master soul? The fact that their souls had not been completely extinguished was already a testament to their strength. The woman went on, seemingly searching for something inside of Xianxia, her expression ever-changing whilst Xianxia's mind was hazy, seemingly only half awake. While in a trance, he heard the woman praise, "What pure spiritual energy! You really are special, boy. Even with just a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivation, you possess such immense spiritual energy. In time, you will become a great weapon." A short while later, the woman suddenly burst into a mad bout of laughter. "I found it! Ha 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 ha! Sure enough, it is the soul-warming lotus. The soul-warming lotus. This queen did not see wrongly, and it has already reached the 7-colored grade, fully capable of bearing the weight of the mirror soul. When Zishan, once this queen has finished refining this world, this queen will not let you off easy." As her words fell, a look of extreme ruthlessness blossomed in her beautiful eyes, her tender body transforming into a stream of light that shot straight into Xianxia's brows, entering his soul avatar as if she had turned immaterial. If anyone saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked, because such a practice was filled with dangers. Two different souls could not be fused easily, and the slightest mistake when attempting to do so could lead to the destruction of both souls. Unless one had incredible control, even if they succeeded, they may still be contaminated by the other's mind and lose their sense of self. But this woman obviously has extremely strong control and was not worried about Xianxia's mind contaminating her soul. Shooting into Xianxia's soul avatar, she headed straight for the 7-colored soul-warming lotus, landing at the center of it in just an instant. The pure energy enveloped her, and the gentle feeling of it could not help but make her moan. The soul-warming lotus was a precious treasure that nourished the soul, a unique existence in the entire star boundary. The soul-warming lotus had been recorded in ancient texts, but it had only really appeared 2 or 3 times throughout all of recorded history. If not for this coincidental opportunity, then it was simply impossible for the woman to know that Xianxia had a soul-warming lotus inside his body. Laughing with great pleasure, It seemed as if she was able to see a prosperous path ahead already stretched out in front of her. However, just as she was about to refine the soul-warming lotus, a seven-colored glow suddenly blossomed from the precious treasure, which turned into a seven-colored halo. The halo seemed to have unstoppable force, and the impact on the woman's soul avatar caused her face to pale. Her face changed and she cried out, resisting the rejection of the soul-warming lotus. But before she could do anything, a loud buzzing noise suddenly reached her ears. Stunned, the woman looked up, only to see a dense cloud of tiny insects in front of her, converging on her like locusts onto a field. Soul-devouring insects! The woman's face turned ashen as she shrieked. How can there be soul-devouring insects here? In the next instant, she suddenly understood and hissed in disbelief. That little brat was raising these soul-devouring insects in the soul-warming lotus? He must be insane. Insane! Hong Hong! As she finished speaking, the seven-colored halo of the soul-warming lotus gushed at her again, and even with her strength, she was forced to retreat. She could not fight it at all, because this was the rejection of the precious treasure itself, an aura of rejection towards anyone but its master. The light on the woman's body dimmed a little. Seeing that the light was only growing more intense and the cloud of soul-devouring insects were becoming wilder by the moment, she shouted furiously and had no choice but to retreat. A light flashed in the room and the woman's body reappeared. However, compared to her earlier calm, she now looked a little disheveled. Before she could regain her footing, though, a sharp chill descended from the sky and struck her head-on. This chill was so strong that it actually made her feel threatened. Under the woman's shock, her tender body was shaken by an invisible force that struck her head-on. With a muffled grunt, Yang Kai's body flew backwards. Wong wong wong. The cloud of soul-devouring insects flew out from Yang Kai's body and flew straight at the woman, enveloping her instantly. To these soul-devouring insects, a soul as powerful as this woman's was the most delicious meal in this world. So, even without Yang Kai's intention, the soul-devouring insects began swarming the woman like crazy, wrapping her up in layers without any leaks in no time. The woman did not dare to dally in this situation either. With a shake of her body, a barrier formed around her and stopped the soul-devouring insects from injuring her soul. Soul-devouring insects were the bane of all souls, so even with her powerful cultivation, this woman was unable to kill them. At most, she could suppress and prevent these soul-devouring insects from attacking her. But this was not a long-term solution, as even the barrier she formed to protect herself was made of spiritual energy. As the soul-devouring insects gnawed on it, its protection would grow weaker and weaker. The woman had to constantly release her energy to maintain the barrier. She turned her head again and looked gloomily at Yang Kai, her beautiful eyes fixing on the long blade in his hand. Suddenly, she shouted with horror, "Emperor artifact! A soul-type Emperor artifact!" The sharp, cold threat she felt just now had clearly come from this Emperor artifact. It was only an artifact of this caliber that could cause such a reaction. She could not help but sneer as she looked at Yang Kai. "You have some skills, brat, and plenty of strange treasures to help as well. You actually unlocked the seal right under this queen's nose. That is enough to impress this queen. Heh heh heh." Yang Kai struggled to stand and pointed his soul-splitting saber at the woman, the corners of his lips raising subtly. "Junior is honored to receive such praise from Grandma." The woman's face changed slightly upon hearing this, and she called out in a cold voice, "What did you say?" Looking smug, Yang Kai said with a derisive look on his face, "Still playing dumb even now? Does this junior have to point out your identity? Grandma you." Once the words "Grandma you" came out, the woman's expression suddenly turned as cold as ice. Yang Kai continued, "This junior was also puzzled at first, finding your appearance somewhat familiar, but unable to figure out just where he had met you. Then when did you realize it?" The woman did not seem to deny Yang Kai's speculation, and instead asked with interest, even ignoring the soul-devouring insects gathered around her body's barrier. Things just fell into place. Yang Kai grinned. "Of all the people imprisoned in the divine prison, why did you only pick out the cultivators from Azure Sun Temple?" There was clearly some special reason. You either knew all of them or there was something different about the cultivators themselves. Since everyone here is only a soul avatar, there should naturally not be any differences between foreigners and natives. In other words, the reason you chose to see us was only because you knew we weren't from this world, and you were probably trying to find something on us. And, as for what you are looking for, it was most likely the soul-warming lotus. Earlier you also mentioned Temple Master Wen's name and even put on a look of absolute irreconcilable hatred. The hideous look you wore at that moment, Xianxia smiled, was quite distinctive. It was only when he heard Wen Zishan's name through his hazy consciousness that Xianxia suddenly understood. The woman in front of him was Grandma Yu, who was guarding the divine Ascension mirror. That was why he felt a bit of familiarity when he first saw her. Since Grandma Yu guarded the divine Ascension mirror year-round, she could naturally freely enter and exit it. It's just that Grandma Yu was supposed to be old and decrepit, while the woman in front of him was young and beautiful, so Xianxia did not initially associate the two of them together. "And so you recognized this queen?" Xianxia jeered. "An old granny coming here and putting on the appearance of a beautiful woman is one thing, but you even have the nerve to call yourself this queen?" Grandma, you laughed coldly. "Are you trying to provoke me? If so, your tactics are too childish." Xianxia couldn't help smiling wryly when he realized his intentions were seen through. Xianxia knew very well that when facing a master like Grandma Yu, there was no hope of winning or even escaping unless he could somehow enrage her and cause her to expose some fatal flaw. While he might have some hope in the outside world, in the divine Ascension world, Grandma Yu's strength was at its peak. As such, he jeered and taunted her, but he did not expect her to see through his plan so easily. "Little brat, you're quite sinister." Grandma Yu nodded lightly at Xianxia, praising him. "If my guess is correct, you used these soul-devouring insects to break the seal, correct? So what if I did?" Xianxia's attitude suddenly became aggressive, waving his soul-splitting saber at Grandma Yu as he snapped. "You'd better choose wisely, Grandma. If you recognize these soul-devouring insects, then you should know how powerful they are. You'd best be sensible and let me out. Otherwise, I'll definitely order them to devour you until even your bones are gone." The way he said it really sounded as if he was going to kill Grandma Yu right here. Humph. If they had another 100 years to grow, perhaps this queen would really have to worry. But now? Grandma Yu sneered. With a wave of her hand, she shook off all the soul-devouring insects surrounding her. Many of the soul-devouring insects were dazed from being shaken off like this and buzzed around like headless flies, but they soon recovered and wrapped around Grandma Yu again. "Since we've come to this, then this queen will get straight to the point." Grandma Yu ignored the soul-devouring insects on her body and said to Xianxia, "Be a good boy and erase your mark on the soul-warming lotus, give it to this queen, and this queen will surely not treat you badly." "Why should I?" Xianxia snorted. "What do you think?" Grandma Yu sneered. Xianxia looked helpless and dawdled for a long time before saying, "Let's put that aside for now. Before that, I want to ask something." "What?" "Grandma, how did you know I had the soul-warming lotus?" "It's something I hid very well, something nobody has ever discovered before." Grandma Yu frowned. "It won't hurt to tell you that this queen has been guarding the divine Ascension mirror for more than 2,000 years. Even though I am unable to make this treasure recognize this queen as its master, this queen has still studied it greatly. When your soul avatar passed through the divine Ascension mirror into this world, this queen was able to get a glimpse of the situation inside your body, and it was during that glimpse that this queen discovered. But you couldn't confirm it, right? So, you didn't even know if what you saw was real or not, much less whose body the soul-warming lotus was in. You did, however, know that after we entered the divine Ascension mirror, we would head into Heavenly Monster Mountain to train. So you ordered Zhou Jian to bring his men there and capture the so-called Stars of Calamity. And after catching and bringing us here, you checked us one by one. Xianxia read out his speculations. "That's right. But this queen thought that the soul-warming lotus would be on that brat Xiaosheng's body, or at the very least Xiao Baiyi. I never expected it to be in the hands of you, the least powerful one." "That was unexpected." Xianxia nodded, expressing his understanding. He understood why Xiaoshang and the others were the only ones brought out of the prison despite so many people being locked in there, and what Grandma Yu meant by him being the last one. After checking Xiaoshang and the others and finding no traces of what she was looking for, he was no doubt the last one to be searched. One more question, Yang Kai suddenly said. Brat, you better not reach out for a yard after taking an inch. Grandma Yu's face went cold. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. Grandma, if you don't want to see me destroying the soul-warming lotus, then you better not speak to me like that. Also, you're getting old, so it'll do you well not to rage so much. It's bad for the body. He put on a very concerned look which sent Grandma Yu's anger soaring, but she couldn't do anything about it. Glaring at Yang Kai, Grandma Yu said grimly, You better know your place, boy. I know it very well. Yang Kai gritted his teeth. I hope Grandma can cooperate with me too, or I'll really destroy it. In any case, my life will certainly be miserable if it falls into your hands, so I might as well make you suffer as well. With his constant threats, Grandma Yu really didn't dare to do anything to him. The soul-warming lotus was an extremely precious treasure that would only appear maybe once every 100,000 years, and even then it would only come by chance to a very lucky person. If the owner of the soul-warming lotus died, the soul-warming lotus would not disappear either and would instead absorb all the spiritual energy of its owner, remaining in the world and awaiting the next lucky person. When Yang Kai received the soul-warming lotus, it was only in its 5-colored form and it had retained the spiritual energy of its previous owner, which benefited Yang Kai greatly. Even though the soul-warming lotus would not disappear because of the demise of its owner, using special means like soul self-explosion, a cultivator could destroy their soul and wipe it from existence. Grandma Yu's strength far surpassed Yang Kai, even with the soul-splitting saber and the help of the soul-devouring insects. So how could Yang Kai escape if Grandma Yu really intended to capture him? The reason why she did not make a move was that she was worried Yang Kai would self-destruct and take the soul-warming lotus with him out of desperation. Previously, Yang Kai's power had been sealed and his soul had suffered a shock from her technique. He was defenseless then and could only let her do what she wanted. However, Yang Kai had now regained his freedom and had the opportunity to self-destruct. Grandma Yu stared deeply at Yang Kai for a while before she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to calm herself, then reopening them. This is the last question, little brat. You better know your limits. Of course, Yang Kai grinned. If Grandma cooperates with me, then this junior will certainly not mess around. That's for the best. Grandma Yu nodded. Yang Kai suddenly looked grave as he solemnly asked, Grandma, what are you planning to do with the soul-warming lotus? Hearing this, Grandma Yu frowned, face cold as frost, silently glaring. Yang Kai said, Surely it's not just so you can nurture your soul. From what Grandma said earlier, it seems you would be able to do something about Temple Master One if you had the soul-warming lotus, but how? Junior will put it another way. In that instant, Yang Kai's eyes became sharp, staring straight into Grandma Yu's eyes as he muttered, What is this so-called mirror soul? Why do you need the soul-warming lotus to refine it? The moment these words came out, a ferocious look immediately emerged from Grandma Yu's pretty face as murderous intent faintly diffused. Grandma, we had a deal. Are you going back on your word? If you're going to do this, then Junior will also go back on his word. You can't blame me for being unjust. Don't cry after I destroy the soul-warming lotus. Seeing her remain silent for such a long time, Yang Kai immediately pressed her. Grandma Yu cackled in rage. Do you really dare to? You can try it if you dare. This queen will stand by and watch. She suddenly put on a look as if she was there to watch a good show. Yang Kai couldn't help but scratch his nose and shook his head. In any case, you shouldn't force me, Grandma. I'll really destroy it if I'm left with no choice. Humph. Puny little brat. Grandma Yu cursed at him, upset. Naturally, she wasn't in a good mood as a master being threatened by Yang Kai in such a way. After a moment of silence, she gritted her teeth and said, Little brat, you should know that between this heaven and earth, some artifacts can only appear by pure coincidence. Through days and years, they will form their own consciousness, eventually evolving into artifact spirits. Hearing her explanation, Yang Kai immediately perked up and listened intently, nodding. I know about this. Lu Yen was one of those artifact spirits, so Yang Kai was familiar with this theory. The birth of artifact spirits has much more to do with fate and coincidence than with the grade of the artifact itself. Of course, some say that the higher the grade of the artifact, the higher the chance of an artifact spirit emerging from it. Perhaps it is true. After all, it takes a long time for an artifact spirit to appear, possibly even tens of thousands of years, so if an artifact's grade is too low, it cannot survive that long. Yang Kai did not say a word as Grandma Yu went on, listening intently. And this divine ascension mirror possesses its own artifact spirit. When she said this, Grandma Yu stared deeply at Yang Kai. Is that the mirror soul that you speak of, Granny? Yang Kai raised a brow. Indeed, Grandma Yu nodded lightly. This queen has been studying the divine ascension mirror for thousands of years since discovering it. But this queen has never been able to refine it and use it for herself. But once, long ago, I chanced upon the will of this world, the mirror soul. Without subduing the mirror soul, it is simply impossible to refine this world. But how easy can it be to subdue such an entity? Even this queen with her soul avatar cultivated to this level is unable to achieve such a feat. Forcibly collecting this mirror soul will only destroy my own soul, since the strength of the mirror soul is something that even a great emperor-level cultivator might not be able to accommodate. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel roused and said, surprised, So, you thought of using something else to carry the will of this world? Grandma Yu coldly snorted. Is there any other way? But the requirements for this idea are also too harsh. Just how many divine objects are able to achieve this? Speaking up to hear, she suddenly gazed hotly at Yang Kai and said, The soul-warming lotus you possess, however, is one such item. So, that's how it is. Yang Kai nodded his head, enlightened. As long as this queen can obtain the soul-warming lotus, this queen will be able to use it as a carrier for this precious treasure. Together with the mirror soul of this divine ascension mirror, this queen can completely refine this world. And when that time comes, this queen's soul will be able to soar up to the level of a great emperor. As for a petty little Wenzi Shan, she grinned from ear to ear and shrieked, he would be worth nothing. Grandma Yu, you have quite a deep resentment towards Temple Master One, Yang Kai said, exasperated. Don't mention that bastard to me. Grandma Yu suddenly burst out into a rage. If it weren't for him, this queen would have been able to study this divine ascension mirror quietly, and then this divine treasure would be mine in the end. But 800 years ago, he suddenly came to Azure Sun Mountain Range, beat this queen, then demanded I hand over this treasure. This queen couldn't stand it. Is that so? Yang Kai said casually. Grandma Yu glanced at him, gradually restraining the fury on her face. Her tone also began to soften as she said, Boy, this queen has told you everything you need to know. So the time has come for you to pass the soul-warming lotus to this queen. Rest assured, this queen only wishes to deal with Wenzi Shan. After this wish is fulfilled, you may do whatever you wish. Many thanks, Grandma Yu, Yang Kai smirked before saying. But this is quite a difficult situation. Grandma Yu's face turned cold as she watched Yang Kai grimly, gloomily snapping. You mean to go back on your word, boy? No, no, no. Yang Kai denied immediately. Only even if I agree to this, Temple Master One would not. Isn't that right, Temple Master One? At the last sentence, he suddenly turned his eyes towards a certain spot in the corner. What? When Grandma Yu heard this, her face changed and shouted while looking around her. When Zishan is here? She was like a mouse that had seen a cat, seemingly terrified of meeting Wen Zishan. But in the next instant, she realized she had fallen for Yang Kai's trick. There was no Wen Zishan standing anywhere, and instead, Yang Kai had darted out while she was caught in a moment of panic. You damned brat! Grandma Yu was furious, her pretty face turning ferocious, and with a flicker of her body, she rushed out to pursue Yang Kai. Even though Yang Kai used his teleportation ability, he was still unable to escape from Grandma Yu's pursuit. Grandma Yu had already caught up with him as soon as he left the palace and blocked his path. Grandma Yu pointed a finger at Yang Kai and a vortex of energy surged at her fingertip, seemingly containing a vast amount of power. Yang Kai was horrified and his face changed. But without thinking, he shouted, "Blossoming lotus!" With these words, a white lotus suddenly blossomed around his body. Unlike the blossoming lotus secret technique he performed in the outside world, when he displayed this unparalleled soul technique directly with his soul avatar, the lotus bud was directly exposed, allowing Grandma Yu to see it clearly. The soul-warming lotus. Grandma Yu smiled happily when she saw this and her hands moved slightly. Right at that moment though, the lotus flower bud shook slightly and then suddenly disappeared, turning into a stream of light that shot directly into Grandma Yu's body. Even someone as strong as Grandma Yu couldn't help letting out a stifled grunt as her body shook. In the next moment, her beautiful face lost its color, because she could feel her strength being sapped rapidly, as if something inside her was eating away at it. And, following the dissipation of her spiritual energy, a flower bud blossomed around her, giving off an intoxicating fragrance. Yang Kai was able to catch her off guard with this attack and did not dare delay in the slightest. Wielding his soul-splitting saber, he slashed it straight towards Grandma Yu. Even though his opponent was slightly affected by the blossoming lotus secret technique, she was not defenseless, blowing a sudden gust of wind towards Yang Kai and forcing him back with a slight lift of her hand. The difference in strength between them was too great, so despite using all the tricks up his sleeve, Yang Kai was still not Grandma Yu's opponent. He cursed and dared not stay any longer. Teleporting away, Yang Kai instantly moved a few thousand meters and escaped straight out of the palace. The sound of Grandma Yu's angry roar came from behind him. Everyone was shocked silent in the palace. Zhou Dian, Yu Man, and Yuan Qing were all looking towards the source of the noise with shocked faces. A few moments later, outside the palace, Yang Kai's body shot out like a shooting star. He had no idea what he was going to do now, but he knew that if Grandma Yu caught him again, he wouldn't be as lucky as he was just now. When that time came, Grandma Yu would definitely suppress him with absolute strength and forcibly extract the soul-warming lotus from his body. Now though, he could only take things one step at a time. In the middle of these thoughts, an amazing pressure suddenly appeared from behind him and pressed down on his body like a mountain. Yang Kai stumbled and almost fell down, and when he looked back, he saw Grandma Yu several dozen kilometers behind him, chasing after him at incredible speed as she hurled threats. "Little brat, this queen will make you beg for a quick death." But how could Yang Kai pay her any attention? Pushing the space principles around him to his limit and running for his life was all he cared about right now. But the difference in power was too great, so his efforts were merely delaying the inevitable. Even Zhou Dian was able to capture him, let alone Grandma Yu herself. Even though both were third-order emperors, Grandma Yu had been studying the divine Ascension mirror for thousands of years, so even if she was unable to refine it, she could still borrow some of its powers to enhance herself. It was no more than 3 breaths of time before Grandma Yu's figure caught up to him. From a short distance away, she laughed at him, locking onto him with her divine sense while using her spiritual energy to blockade the space around Yang Kai's body, making it impossible for him to teleport away. This time, she obviously had no intentions of beating around the bush with Yang Kai and flew straight towards him, reaching out her hand to capture and suppress him. Yang Kai's face turned black as he tried to think of some way out of this situation, but he was unable to come up with a way to resolve the crisis before his eyes. The soul-warming lotus probably wouldn't be able to stop Grandma Yu, and it was also his last resort, so Yang Kai really did not dare to use it until the true critical moment arrived. Seeing that he was about to be captured, Yang Kai prepared himself to fight Grandma Yu to the death. But at that moment, there was a sudden change. From the west, a stream of light arrived in a flash in front of Yang Kai. A beautiful figure emerged and radiated cold, murderous intent. A peerless beauty with bitingly cold sword chi. Looking at this person's beautiful back, Yang Kai's eyes lit up and he called out softly to her, "Elder Gao." This person was Gao Xueting, who separated from them shortly after their arrival in this world. For some reason, she suddenly arrived and stood in front of Yang Kai at the critical moment. Yang Kai noticed that she was carrying a longsword that had a sharp blade and a staggering energy fluctuation. It was an Emperor-grade soul-type artifact. But from the appearance of this Emperor artifact, it seemed to have just finished being refined. But soon, Yang Kai realized that something was wrong and shouted, "Elder Gao, you are not her opponent, quickly run." Gao Xueting was only a cultivator at the First Order Emperor realm, so even though she had entered the Divine Ascension Mirror World 4 times, and her spiritual energies cultivation was slightly stronger than that of her physical body, she was still no match for Grandma Yu. Her coming here would not help at all. Faced with Yang Kai's shout, Gao Xueting was unmoved, simply standing before him calmly as she indifferently said, "Don't worry." On the other hand, Grandma Yu obviously recognized Gao Xueting as well, her expression fluctuating a few times before she stopped and shouted, "Get out of the way." She seemed to be afraid to lay a hand on Gao Xueting, her expression twisted into knots. But Gao Xueting ignored her and instead turned to Yang Kai and asked with concern, "Are you injured?" Yang Kai shook his head. "I'm fine. Where are Xianxia and the others?" "They're being held in the divine prison. But Brother Xia and the others are suffering from some shock to their souls right now. Fortunately, they are not in any life-threatening danger." "Good." Gao Xueting was visibly relieved. "Elder Gao, why did you come?" Yang Kai looked at her, surprised. "I went to Heavenly Monster Mountain earlier, thinking I would check up on your training in secret, but on the way there I learned some unsavory news and rushed back. Luckily, I arrived just in time." Hearing this, Yang Kai showed a look of understanding. Gao Xueting really did arrive just in the nick of time. If she had been just a step too late, Grandma Yu would have caught him. Outside the palace, above a certain empty plain, Gao Xueting faced off against the Third Order Emperor Realm Grandma Yu with just her First Order Emperor Realm cultivation. Yet she showed no fear. Brushing her hair back behind her ear, Gao Xueting spoke calmly, "Grandma, how about we end matters here?" Grandma Yu was slightly taken aback by her words, but she soon burst out laughing and shouted, "Little girl, who do you think you're talking to?" "You, of course, Grandma." Gao Xueting remained as indifferent as before. "If you promise to end matters here, then the temple master may show some leniency and not give you any trouble. But if you insist on continuing this, Grandma, you and I have known each other for hundreds of years. And even if you never officially joined the temple, you still showed some affection towards us, so I do not wish to use ruthless measures." "Are you threatening me?" Grandma Yu's face turned fierce and her voice became sharp. Gao Xueting shook her head. "Grandma is my senior. Xueting does not dare to threaten you. But Xueting has received orders from the temple master to bring these disciples into the Divine Ascension Mirror to train, so she must keep them safe. I will allow no one to hurt them, not even you." "Grandma." Hee. Grandma Yu began to laugh. "Little girl, your strength isn't much, but your words certainly are big. What do you think you can do to this queen with your puny abilities? If not for how well-behaved you'd been all these years, you think this queen would even bother talking to you like this? Grandma, do you still remember when Xueting would secretly bring you food when Xueting was small?" Gao Xueting suddenly brought up the past. Grandma Yu's face turned cold and she said in a cold voice, "What are you bringing that up for?" A hint of nostalgia could not help but flash past her eyes, and her fierce expression softened slightly for a moment. "Xueting sincerely hopes that Grandma can stop things here." Gao Xueting sighed. "Impossible." The coldness reappeared in Grandma Yu's eyes and she yelled, "This queen has waited so many years and finally found a trace of hope. You want this queen to give up with just a few words? That's foolish nonsense." Gao Xueting frowned. "I don't know what you're waiting for or what you're hoping for, Grandma. But must you do this? It's been 800 years, and even though you never did so formally, Gao Xueting has long taken you as a member of the temple, and also Xueting's senior. Xueting really does not want to raise her hand against you." "Enough nonsense." Grandma Yu's patience had also run out and she raised her voice. "You either stand aside now or this queen will kill you right here and now. It's your choice." Hearing this, Yang Kai's face could not help but tense up. Even though Gao Xueting was also considered a master, He knew she was not the opponent to someone at Grandma Yu's level. If he ended up dragging Gao Shueting into danger, it would definitely rack him with guilt. Ha! Gao Shueting suddenly sighed deeply and looked at Grandma Yu, saying, Grandma, the temple master knew all along you were harboring a grudge against him because of that battle back then. Even so, he still had me lead the team into this divine ascension mirror at ease, not worried that you would bring them any harm at all. Why do you think that is? At these words, Grandma Yu's face changed slightly and she thought about it with a frown. Gao Shueting continued, over the years, many disciples who entered the divine ascension mirror to train were killed by you. Yet the temple master never held you responsible and instead accepted it naturally as a kind of tempering test for the disciples. One part of this is because you did not act personally. Even if you sent your subordinates out for them, you would only send cultivators at similar strengths to them, which can indeed be considered a type of test. Secondly, the temple master felt that he owed you. After all, you were the one who discovered the divine ascension mirror. Even though he did take it by force, he did treat it as the most precious capital of the temple, repeatedly allowing his disciples to enter this place and train. When Zishan feels that he owes this queen, Grandma Yu suddenly sneered. He really feels that way despite having fed his conscience to the dogs? That's simply laughable, Gao Shueting said, unmoved. That is why the temple master has instructed us not to use this last resort unless there is no other choice, because he sincerely hoped that you would guard the divine ascension mirror. What last resort? Grandma Yu's face suddenly tensed up as she stared at Gao Shueting with glaring eyes. But Gao Shueting did not answer her, instead just forming a series of seals with her hands and saying, Rest assured, Grandma, I have already informed the temple master of this matter through a secret technique. He should be waiting in the stone cavern at this moment. You can speak with him in detail when your soul returns. With that, she pushed her palms forward and a light circle blossomed from them, gently shooting out straight towards Grandma Yu. This light was clearly not some kind of attack and carried no threat with it. But Grandma Yu's face changed drastically the instant she saw it, and she shrieked in terror. No! As she screamed, she even turned around and ran, trying to flee. But though she may be fast, the circle of light was even faster, and in an instant, it hit her and melted into her soul. The next moment, an inexplicable force rose up, and a strange vortex appeared above Grandma Yu's head, emitting a strong suction force as it sucked her away. Naturally, Grandma Yu wasn't going to just stand there and take this. So in a fury, she let out a hysterical roar and released a surge of pure spiritual energy that shot towards Gao Shueting. Gao Shueting's face changed. Grandma Yu's desperate attack was clearly made with her full strength and not something she could take on with her power. She could only try to dodge it. But just as she was about to move, a figure suddenly appeared in midair before her. It was an old man with an immortal temperament and an all-white beard. His entire being was inconspicuous, and if he did not take the initiative to show himself, no one present would have noticed him. As soon as the old man appeared, he lightly waved his sleeve. A soft power spread out, neutralizing the impact of Grandma Yu with ease. You? Grandma Yu's eyes widened as she stared at the old man with a look of disbelief, as if she had seen a ghost. But right at that moment, she could no longer resist the power from the vortex above her, and her body was sucked into it amidst her unresigned roars. Immediately after, the vortex disappeared without a trace along with Grandma Yu's figure. As Xianxia watched this scene, thoughts were churning deep in his mind. When Zishan must have left some kind of seal on Grandma Yu's body and had taught Gao Shueting how to activate it. Once the seal was activated, Grandma Yu's physical body would draw her soul back. And that is what led to this scene. After being hit by the secret technique, the Third Order Emperor Realm Grandma Yu was simply unable to remain in the Divine Ascension world. Even though this was only Xianxia's guess, it couldn't be far off. After all, the physical body and the soul are inextricably linked. The only thing that could draw Grandma Yu's soul out of this world so forcefully would be her true body. While Xianxia was speculating, Gao Shueting was staring at the old man who suddenly appeared before her with a look of suspicion on her face. She released her divine sense to probe this old man. But when it came in contact with him, She was shocked to find that, as far as she could tell, he didn't exist. In other words, her divine sense was unable to detect any traces of him. This discovery caused Gao Shueting's face to turn serious in an instant. Even against masters like Grandma Yu and Wen Zishan, she would be able to detect a trace of her opponent's presence with her divine sense. So the situation here with this old man was a first for her. There was only one explanation for this strange phenomenon. The cultivation of this old man must be even higher than Grandma Yu and Wen Zishan's. Since those two were already third-order Emperor Realm Masters, the only existence which was higher than them had a special name in both worlds, Great Emperor. There was actually a Great Emperor within the world of the Divine Ascension Mirror. Wen Zishan had never told her such a thing, so perhaps even he was unaware of this fact. Gao Shueting stood in awe and quickly bowed. Junior Gao Shueting greets Senior. N. The old man nodded lightly. Senior, are you perhaps partners with Grandma? Gao Shueting asked. Yang Kai looked at Gao Shueting with a bewildered face and suddenly realized that the icy cold elder Gao actually had such a cute side to her too. If he was with Grandma Yu, then he wouldn't have needed to help her just now. He would have subdued her a long time ago. Why would he give her the chance to perform the secret technique? No. The old man shook his head slowly. Junior offers her sincere thanks for Senior's life-saving grace. I just don't know if Senior... Gao Shueting asked tentatively. Even though she did not feel the slightest hostility from this old man, his astonishing cultivation made it so she did not dare to show the least bit of carelessness, lest she accidentally anger or upset him. If she did, then even Wen Zishan would not be able to save her. This old master came here. As the old man spoke, he turned his gaze towards Yang Kai and said solemnly, For him! For me! Yang Kai had a stunned look on his face. Gao Shueting was also slightly taken aback, turning unconsciously towards Yang Kai, wondering what was so special about him that a great emperor had personally come to find him. As far as she knew, Yang Kai was entering the Divine Ascension Mirror for the first time and did not even know about its existence before then. So it was unlikely that these two had met each other before. After settling her thoughts, Gao Shueting asked, May I ask Senior what he needs from him? The old man smiled amiably and said, Rest assured, this old master will not trouble him in any way. I simply need a few days of his time to help this old master with a certain matter. I will send him out from here after it is done. Gao Shueting raised her brows in surprise. Out from here? Senior, what do you know? Clearly, the fact that the old man mentioned getting out from this place revealed some extraordinary information. The old man smiled and said, This old master can take a slight peep at the outside world, so I also know about you and the other Outlanders. Yang Kai was shocked at his words. Yi Quan knew about the Divine Ascension world because of Wen Zishan's drunken ramblings. However, this old man was able to spy on the outside world with his own ability. That confirmed that the strength of this old man had already reached the Great Emperor realm. It was only with this kind of strength that one's divine sense would be able to break free of the bonds of the world and see beyond its borders. You need not worry about his safety. This old master will not hurt him. I simply wish to borrow his power. The old man patiently explained to Gao Shueting. After that, he looked towards the palace and continued. Your disciples are still inside. Though their souls are not too damaged, they have still suffered from some shock. It would be best to bring them out of here as soon as possible so they may recuperate. Many thanks to Senior for the reminder, Gao Shueting hurriedly said. The old man nodded lightly. Then, he turned his gaze to Yang Kai and said in a kind voice, Little friend, come with me. Then, with a wave of his hand, Yang Kai immediately felt a soft power wrapping around him, and he flew involuntarily to the old man's side before he quickly sped off with him in one direction. Gao Shueting opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but there were already no traces of Yang Kai and the old man. They had already disappeared in a breath's time. Gazing at the direction in which they disappeared, Gao Shueting faintly wrinkled her brow. She knew that the old man had no need to lie to her with his exceptional cultivation and strength, and if he really did have any hostile intentions, he could have crushed her to dust with just a finger. However, He had taken away Yang Kai so inexplicably that Gao Shueting still couldn't help but worry. She had no idea what sort of power Yang Kai had that this old man needed to borrow, or what he wanted to accomplish by doing so. After thinking about it for a while, she knew she was powerless to solve the matter, and she didn't even have any way to track down the old man's whereabouts. So she could only head to the palace first and save Xiaxiang and the others, deciding to send Wen Zishan a message with a secret technique and have him find a way to retrieve their soul avatars from the outside. Traveling along at lightning speeds, the wind from the outside blew past as the ground seemed to recede at a blinding pace. Yang Kai looked astonished. This old man beside him was indeed a great emperor-level master. Before now, Yang Kai had only heard of the existence of great emperors but had never seen one himself. Of course, Yang Yan might be a great emperor, maybe. But even if Yang Yan was a great emperor, her strength was not very high during the time they spent together. It was only after she returned to the star boundary that her cultivation would gradually restore itself. He had never really seen a great emperor's true strength before. But today, his long-awaited wish was fulfilled. Grandma Yu's third-order Emperor Realm Desperation attack was little more than a gentle breeze before this old man. Simply not worth mentioning. And at this moment, while bringing Yang Kai along with him, they were actually moving several dozen times faster than Yang Kai could. Even when using space principles, Yang Kai could not even see the scenery where they passed. He was deeply shocked to realize just how high above the understanding of ordinary cultivators a great emperor's power was. On the way, Yang Kai kept silent and did not ask the old man what he planned to do. That was because it was meaningless even if he asked him that now. He would naturally know when the time came, as the other party was not hostile. He had no need to think about running away, instead just silently trying to feel the emperor intent and emperor pressure permeating from the body of the old man so as to quench his own will. He did not speak, and it seemed the old man did not take the initiative to do so either, only busying himself with hurrying along, even revealing a somewhat relaxed expression as he flew. After a long day, the old man brought Yang Kai to a certain mountain valley. It was only after arriving here that the old man finally slowed down. Yang Kai looked around and found that this mountain valley was covered by a fog so dense that you would not be able to see your fingers in front of you. And this fog was clearly no ordinary fog, as it felt as if he was tossing a stone into an ocean when he released his divine sense into it. A few moments later, the two landed on a flat piece of land in the middle of the mountain valley. The soft power that had been wrapped around Yang Kai slowly dissipated. After Yang Kai regained his freedom, he began looking around himself. Soon, he realized that this was seemingly the only place in the mountain valley not covered by the thick fog. The area wasn't very large, and the only thing he could see was a simple wooden house with around 30 or so burial mounds in front of it. A wooden headstone erected on each one of them with a name inscribed onto it. Yang Kai was stunned. Even though he knew that there must be no corpses buried beneath these mounds, he still had the inexplicable feeling that many powerful masters were lying here. He swept his eyes over each of the names one by one, but he didn't recognize a single one of them. The names were written in characters that resembled flying dragons and soaring phoenixes, each stroke containing a kind of power that he couldn't help but feel moved at the sight of. "Little friend, what should I call you?" The old man suddenly spoke while gazing amiably at Yang Kai. Yang Kai quickly cupped his fists and introduced himself. "So, it is little friend Yang. A pleasure meeting you." The old man nodded lightly. Yang Kai said solemnly, "May I ask for this senior's name?" The old man was silent for a moment before he said, "This 0LD master is called Tianyan." Yang Kai saluted him once more. After Tianyan answered him, he pointed to the graves in front of him and said, "Little friend Yang, do you know who these people are?" Yang Kai said with a solemn expression. Even though Junior does not recognize any of their names, Junior knows that these seniors must have history-shaking achievements that bring glory to the present. Masters with amazing cultivation and skills. "Heh!" Tianyan smiled. "You are not wrong, but do you know how they died?" Yang Kai shook his head blankly. In fact, he was also wondering about that. Tianyan was such an amazing master, and he seemed to be guarding this place. That simple wooden house was quite clearly the place where Tianyan rested and meditated. To have a great emperor-level existence like Tianyan guarding their graves, these departed masters must be legendary figures. But, if that was the case, then who was it that managed to kill them? Could it be that Tianyan did it himself? Yang Kai did not think the old man looked like a bloodthirsty person. Tianyan said, "Long ago, this world's martial Tao was far more prosperous than it is today. Third-order emperors were constantly emerging and many prosperous sects contended with one another." Tianyan did not answer the question from before and instead suddenly recalled the past. Yang Kai did not dare to interrupt him either, and instead quickly put on a focused mood and listened attentively. During that time, this old master was also just a third-order emperor, the same as the woman you met today. Tianyu went on. Yang Kai knew that he was referring to Grandma Yu. This world is very different from the outside world, but since it exists, it will also have its own principles. Many masters sought ways to become even stronger by controlling these principles. Some sought common ground while others fought for different ideals. Those were joyous days. A look of reminiscence emerged in Tianyan's eyes. When he heard this, Yang Kai suddenly had a bad feeling, as if there was going to be a big twist or something. As he had expected, Tianyan went on. But when it suddenly appeared, the world changed immensely. What was it? Yang Kai asked in surprise. He couldn't imagine what on earth could cause this entire world to change and result in the deaths of the masters who were buried here. In other words, whatever had appeared had the power to destroy a world. Tianyan shot him a thoughtful glance and said, "A swarm of insects." Yang Kai's face changed and he suddenly recalled what Yi Quan told him previously, asking solemnly, "Soul-devouring insects?" Back when he was still in Heavenly Monster Mountain, Yi Quan told Yang Kai that the Divine Ascension Mirror's world was once nearly destroyed by soul-devouring insects, and warned him that should he have the chance to enter the Divine Ascension world again, he should under no circumstances bring his soul-devouring insects with him unless he could fully control them. He couldn't leave them behind when he left, either. Yang Kai clearly remembered Yi Quan's serious expression and solemn tone when he said those words. Combined with Yi Quan's words, Yang Kai realized what the old man was talking about. Indeed, Tianyan nodded. No one knows where those insects came from, but they were so weak in the beginning that nobody paid them any mind. However, due to their special characteristics which greatly restrained those of this world, they continued to kill and devour while rapidly growing stronger. Wherever they passed, life was extinguished and wails of despair could be heard throughout the land. All living beings were mere prey to them, and none could resist. Families were destroyed one by one, cities swallowed up, and in less than a dozen years, they had grown to an almost unmanageable degree. When Tianyan spoke of this past, a haziness filled his eyes. By the time the masters of this world realized how dangerous the situation had become, that swarm of insects had already grown to a level that no one could suppress. Yang Kai's face changed slightly. As the owner of the soul-devouring insects, he had such a special group of insects with him. Yang Kai understood better than anyone else how these soul-devouring insects could harm this world. He himself once envisioned that if the soul-devouring insects were given a certain amount of time, then they could definitely grow to dominate everything in this world. But that was just a prediction. Yang Kai had no idea if it would really work. However, from what Tianyan told him just now, Yang Kai learned that this did in fact happen in the past. Even without experiencing that scene, Yang Kai could almost imagine what a tragedy it was. The only thing left behind where the soul-devouring insects passed would be silence and death. They were too powerful, and their ability to suppress those of this world was too obvious. They continuously devoured the souls of masters to grow stronger and stronger. Tianyan took a deep breath and continued. So, in a last-ditch effort, all of the world's masters banded together to launch a decisive battle against the soul-devouring insects, both for themselves and for this world. Yang Kai could feel the blood in his body race. Even though Tianyan did not describe the scene of that battle, it almost felt as if he could see dozens of Emperor Realm Masters bravely attacking the clouds of soul-devouring insects with their divine abilities. That battle must have caused the color to fade from heaven and earth. That battle must have dimmed the sun and the moon. That battle must have been destined to be forgotten by the world. Because after that battle, the masters who fought it all died, leaving only their names recorded on their graves. After more than 10,000 years, their names had already been lost to history. The people living and working peacefully in this world had no idea that such a thrilling battle once took place all those years ago. Only a single old man guarded their uncrowned graves silently. Only these graves recorded the great achievements that they had made, and only here would their dedication to this world be recalled. I trust that you are able to envision the results of that battle. A look of sadness emerged on Tianyan's face as he pointed to the graves. Yang Kai stood in awe and bowed deeply to the graves. Standing up straight, he then asked, "Then what about the soul-devouring insects? Were they able to be killed?" Tianyan shook his head slowly and said gloomily, "It is a shame, but though we had to pay such a great price, those soul-devouring insects really could not be exterminated by the beings of this world." Yang Kai's face changed greatly and he said, shocked, "Senior means that those soul-devouring insects are still alive." Tianyan nodded. "How can that be?" Yang Kai suddenly felt sad. So many masters here died in order to exterminate those soul-devouring insects, paying the ultimate price in the process, yet they were still unsuccessful in the end. Did that mean that even that sacrifice was not enough? Thinking about that, Yang Kai was horrified and asked, "Then, where are the soul-devouring insects now? Come with me." As he spoke, the old man wrapped his power around Yang Kai again, and in a flash, they arrived in front of a dark altar. He waved his hand to disperse the fog here to reveal the altar and pointed to it with a sad look on his face. "The insects that plagued this world back then are all sealed here." There was no need for him to say this, as Yang Kai could already tell. Because when he first appeared here, the soul-devouring insects laying in his soul-warming lotus had already begun squirming uncontrollably, as if they wanted to break free from Yang Kai and fly out from his body. At the same time, a buzzing sound came from the altar, forming a strange resonance with the soul-devouring insects in the soul-warming lotus. Yang Kai's face changed. "You really do possess soul-devouring insects." The old man looked at him with a complicated gaze. "It is also because of the commotion that this old master became aware of it. That is the reason I searched for you in Heavenly Monster Mountain. Yet this old master did not expect that when he rushed there, you were already gone. However, this old master has been guarding this place for over 10,000 years and cannot be more familiar with the aura of the soul-devouring insects. When I felt their unique aura in the Heavenly Monster Mountain and asked the Monster King for answers, I swiftly pursued you to Divine Ascension City. Rest assured, Senior, these soul-devouring insects of mine are not powerful and will not cause any harm to this world. And I will definitely take them away when I leave," Yang Kai hurriedly said. Yang Kai thought that Tianyan brought him here because he wanted him to leave the soul-devouring insects here, and that was why he hurried to explain. "Little friend Yang, you misunderstand me." Tianyan slowly shook his head. "This old master does not want your soul-devouring insects. This world was nearly destroyed because of them. How could this old master want to leave more of these behind? I brought you here to ask you a favor." "What favor?" Yang Kai was confused. "This old master hopes that you can take them away as well." As he said that, Tianyan pointed at the dark altar. The corners of Yang Kai's mouth twitched and he said dryly, "Senior must be joking. These soul-devouring insects of mine are still quite weak, and given that I have had them for a long time, this junior can still control them somewhat, but the soul-devouring insects that are sealed here are beyond junior's control." The soul-devouring insects sealed here had even devoured several dozen third-order Emperor Realm Masters. How could Yang Kai dare to touch them? If he really put them into the soul-warming lotus, he would be dead without a burial in no time. "They are not as strong today as they used to be," Tianyan said. "They have been sealed for 10,000 years without receiving any nourishment, so they have become quite weak. Little friend Yang, since you are able to control your soul-devouring insects, then can't you control these as well?" Yang Kai laughed bitterly. "You evaluate me too highly, Senior. I could still control my soul-devouring insects in the beginning, but less than 20 days after entering this place, my insects have already begun to disobey my orders. After I leave this place, I will still have to find a way to. When he spoke up to this point, Xianxia suddenly paused and fell deep into thought. Seeing him like this, Tianyan also could not help but be shaken and looked at him expectantly. He had been guarding this place for 10,000 years, never once leaving Misty Valley, both to guard the graves of his departed friends as well as the soul-devouring insects. But the soul-devouring insects have always remained a hidden danger to this world. If they could be sent out of here and dealt with once and for all, that would be something Tianyan hoped for earnestly. So, when he noticed the soul-devouring insects in the altar awakening, he immediately searched for the reason and found Xianxia, thus bringing up this request. After a long time, Xianxia looked up with a glimmer in his eyes and asked, "May I ask, Senior, how powerful the soul-devouring insects sealed in here are today?" Hearing this, Tianyan answered cautiously. "According to this old master's estimation, they are a little stronger than your soul-devouring insects, but not that much stronger." "Only that?" Xianxia's eyes lit up when he heard this. "If that's the case, then maybe there is still a chance." "What do you mean by that?" Tianyan asked, puzzled. Xianxia told him with a serious face. "Senior must also know that the world outside is very different from here. Even though the soul-devouring insects are completely lawless here, there are many ways to restrict them in the outside world. Junior has a treasure with him that is the bane of all sorts of exotic insects, such as these." "Such a thing exists?" Tianyan was shaken. Xianxia nodded. "Junior had originally planned to use that treasure to subdue my soul-devouring insects after leaving here, so that they will be obedient to my orders in the future. If the soul-devouring insects sealed here are not too strong, then it may not be impossible for Junior to subdue them as well." The treasure he mentioned was naturally the insect enslavement bracelet left behind by the insect emperor. This thing had a significant suppressive effect on exotic insects, so the soul-devouring insects would definitely be unable to resist its power. Of course, that is only provided that the insects themselves were not too strong. If they were strong enough to the point where they could even devour an Emperor Realm Master, then Xianxia wouldn't dare to be reckless either. But after receiving Tianyan's answer, Xianxia suddenly became somewhat eager to try. "With the help of this treasure, we can indeed make an attempt." Tianyan had a cheerful expression. "This old master just wonders how sure little friend Yang is about this? It was merely an attempt for this old master to bring you here and bring you this request. If it is too dangerous, then let it be. It is no big deal for this old master to guard this place for another 10,000 years." Xianxia smiled and said, "Junior is quite sure that this can work, but Junior will still need Senior's help for this." Tianyan said, "If there is anything you need, just tell me." Xianxia said, "My own soul-devouring insects are fine. They are acting a bit unruly now, but they will bring no harm to me in the immediate future. However, if I am to take these soul-devouring insects here with me, then they will have to enter my soul avatar. Junior would like to ask Senior to please seal them a little in case Junior can't suppress them." That was exactly the thing that worried him. To take the soul-devouring insects away, he first had to take them inside him. How could Xianxia defend against them if they were to get riled up? What's more, he still had to refine the insect enslavement bracelet after he got out and could not be disturbed too much. If he wound up constantly struggling to suppress the new soul-devouring insects, then he wouldn't be able to refine that Emperor artifact at all. But unexpectedly, Tianyan suddenly showed a difficult expression when Xianxia made that request. Xianxia asked, curious, "Is this matter difficult for Senior?" Tianyan looked at him and nodded lightly. Xianxia was surprised. "How come?" "Based on what Senior said, these soul-devouring insects have already become incredibly weak, and your cultivation is so strong. With this old master's strength, it is easy to deter them for a while, but this old master can't leave this world with you. Without following you, this old master will definitely not be able to restrict these soul-devouring insects." Xianxia's eyes went wide and he looked at Tianyan in astonishment. He pointed to the altar and said, "But Senior, how did you seal them back then? The soul-devouring insects back then had to be 10,000 times more powerful than now, so if they could be sealed back then, why couldn't they be sealed now?" Yang Kai couldn't understand it. Tianyan said, "It is embarrassing to admit, but this seal is not the work of this old master." Yang Kai raised his brows and said in surprise, "You mean to say, it was a combination of the efforts of all the people at that time?" "You could say so," Tianyan nodded lightly. "But there was another force included, otherwise, how could this seal have lasted for such a long time?" "What force?" Yang Kai asked. Tianyan did not say anything, but instead reached up and pointed towards the sky. Yang Kai was confused at first, but then when he realized what he meant, he was shocked. "The will of the world. The mirror soul helped," Tianyan said. "This world has its own will and its own laws. The soul-devouring insects brought great harm to this world and killed its inhabitants, which was intolerable to the world. So it used its own principles to aid us, allowing us to seal the soul-devouring insects. After all, no matter how powerful we were just food for the soul-devouring insects. Only with the help of the world itself, creating a layer of protection around us, were we able to stop the soul-devouring insects from devouring us too." When he explained it this way, Yang Kai immediately understood. This seal was probably divided into two layers. The first layer was the mirror soul's will, which is also the will of the world. The other was the combined power of many masters. With the two powers combined, they were able to seal the soul-devouring insects for 10,000 years, and replicating such a feat would be impossible if either one was missing. "Senior, could you help this junior to communicate with the will of this world?" Yang Kai asked with sparkling eyes, because he suddenly thought of Grandma Yu's plan at this moment. The greatest reason that she wanted to snatch away his soul-warming lotus was so she could use it as a carrier to hold the mirror soul and refine this world. If Yang Kai could communicate with the mirror soul, then he may be able to achieve that. Once he succeeded, he would become the master of the divine Ascension mirror and would be able to enter it and train his soul at any time in the future. But that was just a minor benefit. The key point was there were many masters in the divine Ascension mirror, like Yiquan, Bai Lu, Yuanfei, Zhoudian, Yuanqing, Lian Yan, and even the great emperor in front of him, Tianyan. If he could refine a flesh incarnation pill in the future, then Yang Kai would be able to summon a force that could sweep through the star boundary whenever he wanted. Just the thought of it was enough to get Yang Kai's blood pumping. Tianyan kept silent, but there was a meaningful smile on his face. When Yang Kai saw his expression, he understood that he must have overheard his conversation with Grandma Yu and knew that he possessed the soul-warming lotus and what he was thinking about right now when he mentioned communicating with the will of this world. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel awkward for a while. After a short while, Tianyan said, "It is not that this old master is unwilling to help you, but your cultivation is too low. Unless this world takes the initiative to communicate with you, you will not be able to perceive it. It is impossible even if this old master tries to help you bridge the gap. Does it require the power of an emperor, the power to communicate with principles directly?" Yang Kai pondered. Even though a Tao Source Realm cultivator had insights into principle strength, they were at best able to invoke or borrow this power to assist them. On the other hand, an Emperor Realm Master was able to exert direct control over principles. As for the world force that was controlled by the Mirror Soul, that was the highest principle in this world, so to communicate with it, one needed to have the corresponding cultivation. "That's right," Tianyan nodded his head. "Then, that's a shame." Yang Kai sighed a long sigh. Tianyan said, "You have the 7-colored soul-warming lotus, so you may still have a chance. However, your own strength must grow a bit more. If you can really subdue the mirror soul like that woman said and refine this world, then it may be a good thing for the inhabitants of this realm. This old master will wait in anticipation for such a day to come." Yang Kai raised his brows and cupped his fists. "Junior will definitely do his best." Tianyan continued approvingly. "That day will come, but now, the first priority is to deal with these soul-devouring insects." "But Senior," Yang Kai looked troubled. "If Senior can't seal these soul-devouring insects, then Junior doesn't dare to take them away." Tianyan laughed. "Naturally, it is not possible with this old master's power alone. However, if we can borrow the power of this world, it will naturally be fine to recreate the events of the past. Yang Kai's eyes lit up when he heard this and said eagerly, "Then let's not dally. Junior will leave it up to Senior." Tianyan nodded lightly before suddenly sitting down cross-legged and entering a meditative state. Yang Kai waited quietly in place. He knew that Tianyan was trying to communicate with the will of this world. The divine ascension mirrors mirror soul. Tianyan was a great emperor, so there should be a good chance of him achieving this. In a flash, a divine sense as vast as an ocean spread out in all directions, flowing into the void, weaving in and out of the world itself. Yang Kai felt as small as an ant before this pure and powerful divine sense, and revealed a look of fascination as he stared in wonder. This scene lasted for 2 whole hours. Just when Yang Kai was starting to feel uncertain, Tianyan suddenly opened his eyes with a flash of light and spoke, "Little friend Yang, are you ready?" At these words, Yang Kai livened up. He understood that Tianyan had successfully borrowed the power of the world and quickly nodded. "Junior is prepared." Tianyan followed up, "Since you have the soul-warming lotus, this old master will use it as the foundation to form a seal for these soul-devouring insects. But remember, though this old master has borrowed the world's strength and is supporting it with his own spiritual energy, this seal will only last for a short time once you leave this world. Before the deadline comes, you must deal with the soul-devouring insects properly, otherwise, the consequences will be unthinkable. Junior will remember this." Yang Kai nodded seriously. The seal at the altar had remained indestructible for tens of thousands of years because it had been inside the divine ascension mirror world this whole time, allowing the mirror soul to nourish and reinforce it with the world force it controlled. But if Yang Kai left here, the sealing power he took with him would be like a tree without roots, a river without a source. It was simply impossible for it to last long. He had to subdue the soul-devouring insects before the seal was broken, or find a way to dispose of them. Yang Kai made up his mind that if he ultimately could not succeed, he would exile these soul-devouring insects into the void. With his mastery of the Tao of space, creating a tier to the void was a simple matter. "Relax your mind," Tianyan shouted. Yang Kai quickly sat upright and held his breath, concentrating. In the next moment, he saw the dark altar suddenly melting away before his eyes, and at the same time, a sharp buzzing sound emerged. As far as the eye could see, countless soul-devouring insects flew out from where the altar once stood. Looking closely, these soul-devouring insects seemed even more violent and unruly than the ones Yang Kai possessed, and the aura they emitted was incomparably ferocious. After all, these soul-devouring insects were once incredibly powerful. They had only become weakened after being sealed for 10,000 years. Even so, they were still much stronger than the ones Yang Kai himself possessed. Yang Kai had no idea why, but once they were free, they all flew towards him as if something about him attracted them greatly. Naturally, this scene caused Yang Kai's scalp to tingle. He was currently in his soul avatar form, so faced with this group of soul-devouring insects that were beyond his ability to control, there was no doubt he would be devoured in no time if he were to be surrounded by them. Even his conflagrated knowledge C may not be able to restrain them. But even though he was nervous, he didn't avoid them. At the critical moment, Tianyan made his move. Great Emperor-level spiritual energy poured out, and at the same time, a bridge of light suddenly manifested, one end connecting to the distant unknown, and one end connecting to Tianyan's body. The aura emanating from this bridge of light was so great and majestic that it seemed to be able to control everything between the heavens and earth. And, as soon as this bridge appeared, the soul-devouring insects went silent for a moment, as if they were extremely afraid. Tianyan did not pause, his hands forming a series of seals as he merged his own strength with that coming from the light bridge, condensing a ball of light that slowly wrapped around the soul-devouring insects. In less than 10 breaths of time, only that ball of light remained in front of Yang Kai's eyes. And, once this was all over, the light around Tianyan's body had also grown a little dimmer, as if communicating with the will of the world had been extremely draining to him. But he remained indifferent with a solemn face, reaching out to Yang Kai. In response to that motion, the ball of light flew towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai did not dodge, opening his mind to accept it. A moment later, The ball of light melted into Yang Kai's soul avatar, and it was brought into the soul-warming lotus under his guidance, where it stabilized. Yang Kai looked inside himself and soon found the ball of light inside the soul-warming lotus's petals contained countless soul-devouring insects sealed inside of it. Even though they were sealed like this, Yang Kai could still sense a great threat from them, and he knew better than anyone that once the ball of light was broken, these soul-devouring insects would emerge and eat him from the inside out. If that were to happen, no one would be able to save him. I'll teach you a set of techniques now. Familiarize yourself with them and strengthen the seal. Tianyan's voice came after that. Yang Kai nodded seriously. Then, Tianyan began teaching Yang Kai a sealing art in great detail. Yang Kai learned it very quickly and mastered it in just under an hour, much to Tianyan's praise. After strengthening the seal with this method, Yang Kai suddenly had a strange look on his face and looked up in a certain direction. A few tens of thousands of kilometers from Misty Valley in the direction Yang Kai was looking was a small city with a small population. When Yang Kai looked over, a little boy who looked only about 7 or 8 with a delicate, chubby, and silly-looking face also turned his head abruptly towards Misty Valley. A short while later, the little boy's face became very ugly as he muttered, "What a loss! Tianyan, that old bastard, he really dragged this little master down with him this time. I shouldn't have responded to him, what a terrible loss." He muttered like that for a while, but no one paid him any attention. At that time, a girl with 2 pigtails suddenly came up to him and yelled fiercely, "Little fatty, what are you doing? Hurry up and go out of town with this young lady. If we go any later, we won't be able to leave." This little girl was also about 7 or 8 and had a kind of innocent look to her face which quite contrasted with her arrogant way of speaking. "You actually called me little fatty." The little boy was fuming and clenched his fair and tender fist as he barked back, "You little girl, do you have any idea who this little master?" Pong! Before he could finish his sentence, the little girl had jumped up and sent a fist right down onto his head, causing his neck to shrink down and eyes to go red. "Stop that!" he shouted. In response, he got an angry dragon fist to the face. A short while later, the little girl strutted towards the city gate, dragging the little fatty along by the hand as he wore a resentful expression on his face. If one saw his face, they would notice 2 black and blue eyes. Back in Misty Valley, Tianyan looked cheerfully at Yang Kai and said, "Little friend Yang, have you noticed something?" Only then did Yang Kai come back to his senses and looked in surprise at Tianyan. "Senior, you knew all along?" Tianyan smiled. Little friend Yang possesses an astonishing treasure like the soul-warming lotus, and the seal from before contained a trace of this world's power. With the help of the soul-warming lotus, little friend Yang will naturally be able to easily detect the location of that person. When he heard this, Yang Kai quickly cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks, senior." Tianyan waved his hand and said, "This is all I can do to help. If you really wish to become the master of this world, you will need to work hard. That person is not so easy to talk to. Junior understands. If the opportunity comes, Junior will definitely give it a try. This old master also wishes for that day to come. When that time arrives, perhaps this old master will also be able to break through the constraints here and go out to the outside world to have a look." Tianyan showed a longing expression. He and Yiquan basically had the same idea, that they wanted to see the outside world with their own eyes. Only Yiquan was interested in it in order to seek out a higher martial Dao, while Tianyan wished to achieve it purely out of interest.